Good afternoon, gentlemen. Good afternoon. Gotta clear my throat already. Today, we're gonna find out why exactly you're a beta male. Is that outrage bait enough for you? Now we're gonna get serious today. This is gonna be real. All systems are a go. How you guys doing? How'd you like that one? Was that good? Should I stick with that one? I got 3 of them now. I hope that one works. The problem I have with StreamYard and putting music on it is that it sounds really awesome to me in my headphones, and it sounds great when I play it through iTunes, but then when it goes through StreamYard, it sounds like it's coming out of like one of those old AM radios with the single speaker in it from back in the day, right? How you guys doing? How was Sunday's show, man? Sunday's show actually took off. I was mildly surprised and want to thank you very much for sticking with me on that. Let me bring up my color a touch here. Sam Bada is in the house. He is moderating chat today, so play nice with Sam and you won't get banned. I don't ban very many people. I ban spammers. I mean, if you have something to say, or if you got something to disagree with, I'm totally cool with that. Just please go ahead. I mean, be civil, right? But I mean, if you disagree with something, I want to know. I mean, I've always been that way. You know, I get a lot of people say, well, hey man, I'm afraid to go on there because you'll just shout me down or put me on mute. I can do that, actually. I could put you on mute. I can even, you know, it's interesting right now is all I'd have to do is get a new, well, I mean, I have a burner cell phone, so I could do it with the burner cell phone, but I could actually establish my own call-in line and take live phone calls. But the problem is I don't have a screener. This is me. No one else here. There's no cute little girl over here. There's no board over here. There's no Dave Rubin style stuff. We fly by the seat of our pants here at The Rational Male. I am your host, Rollo Tomassi, author of The Rational Male. In case you didn't know, I'm practicing my delivery lately. So anyways, today we're going to talk about, are you a beta male? Are you? I don't know. And before anybody says, comments on the obvious here. No, I'm not trying to cash in on the simp thing that's going on right now. I know John did something about simps the other day. I think it's interesting is like I've been in this sphere for so long that I've seen like terminology come and go. I can remember when we didn't call beta males. We used to call them AFCs, which stands for average frustrated chump, which actually I think is probably a little bit more apropos than simp or even beta male these days. We're going to talk about the definitions, like what constitutes being beta, or like what are the characteristics of a beta male. That's the easy part of all this. The hard part of all this is going to be sort of tying it all together so you get an idea where you're at. I think a lot of guys, yeah, exactly. Simp is kind of a cuck, and cuck. Yeah, cuck is outmoded for sure. Wait, where'd you put that? Give me that. Come here. There you go. Max Necro says, yeah, simp because cuck is outmoded. Yeah, I mean, we all have our terminologies, man. I mean, of course, you guys know me. I've been around the block a few times. I'm going to answer on topic questions. I had Mike Wilson here. I saw you right as I was going into the music here. He says, how do you ask questions and donate? Where do you donate? Well, you can go look at the description of the video, which is right there. You can go and donate either through a super chat, or you can, if you are really generous, and this is the, I hate to sound like, like I'm playing you guys or anything like that, because I mean, it's nice to get money for this. Don't get me wrong. I'm not going to turn it down, but if you want to really help me out or help the show out or help me write my next book, or you want to just show your appreciation, the best way to do it is either through PayPal or crypto. I take Bitcoin. All those addresses are also in the description. They're in the description of every single video. And the reason I suggest those is because YouTube doesn't take a cut out of those. They take a cut out of a lot of other things. This is not my main source of income. This is not even my secondary source of income. This is like Rollo Tomassi, buy a new board money, right? Or buy a new mic money, or buy some software kind of money. Every time anybody, if you decide that something I said here was beneficial to you, I'm more than happy to take it. Also, if you go to the Rational Mail, which is therationalmail.com, that is my website, my blog, which has a new, a new post on there. And it is called The Mystery of the Red Dress, which in a way is kind of related to today's topic. But if you go to my site and you go to the top little tabs up there, there's one that says donate. If you don't want to give money to me, then don't. That's fine. I mean, buy my books, yeah. But if you want to make a donation to my charity, which is the Greyhound, it's called Gray Save. And these are the guys that I got Ned from, and they're fantastic. They're in Southern California, and the people that do it are they're very dedicated to helping greyhounds. And they there's just a quick aside. I've been reconditioning greyhounds for a little over 10 years now, and I've reconditioned them. I'm not a trainer by any stretch of the imagination. I can train, but just like the basic stuff. I have nursed greyhounds back to health from broken legs, which is a very common injury for racing greyhounds. I got into it when I lived in Florida back in 2010. And I have had, let's see, Ned is number 8 or number 9. I can't remember which one. I have over the years fostered and had, at one point I had 5 greyhounds in my house, and that was an interesting experience for about 3 months. So, but I foster them sometimes. I haven't fostered in a while. I probably, if I had a bigger place, maybe after this place, what I really like to do is, if I actually ever buy property again, I want to buy some more like territory, like some ground property, so I can turn it into sort of my dream, which is a greyhound refuge. So anyways, just long story short, go over to my donation page on therationalmail.com, and there is a link there where you can, you know what you can do? You can go on to Gray Save's website, and you can sponsor a dog, a particular dog. If you go, oh man, that's the coolest dog in the world. I can't have a dog, but I'll support it. That's cool. Anything works, man. Like $25, no problem. $10, fine. I'm sure it buys treats or whatever else for them. And they're just really good, deserving dogs. And I fell in love with the breed a long time ago. So there you go. So anyways, Mike, sorry to long-winded there. That's how you can donate. You can donate directly to me via the stuff in the description, or you can go do that and do a good deed, right? See, we're all one big happy doggy family here. Yes, Bulletproof Coffee. Once again, they should be paying me residuals by now. Today's guitars, by the way, are both Ibanez Destroyers. The one right directly behind me, the 6-string, is a 1984 X Series Ibanez X Series Destroyer. It's a little custom job. I don't know if you can see it there. And it has the Floyd Rose floating trim, which is the first original number one or number 2 Floyd Rose. I can't remember. And then, of course, this one right here is my bass, which, by the way, was used to create the bass line of today's show. So anyways, Mr. C says, would you describe Jordan Peterson as having beta mindset or alpha, red pill or blue pill? Thoughts? I can't figure out where he falls into. Okay, I'm going to start with this one because this is kind of on topic. I have been on record as saying I have if I was to sit down with Jordan Peterson, I probably would agree with him on about 80% of the stuff that he talks about. I have questions about another like 5 or 10%, and then there's another 10% I would completely disagree with him about, simply because that would be the percent that he talks about his very limited knowledge of the female sex and female nature. Yes, I know he's written books about the cosmic feminine and all this other, kind of esoteric kind of stuff. I get it. The problem I have with a lot of guys who are sort of quote unquote gurus right now, who talk a lot about the, I guess, intersexual dynamics, is a lot of them want to get on the bandwagon here. Everybody wants to be a guru. It's not difficult to be called a guru these days. And even if you don't call yourself a guru, other people will call you a guru. And because that's kind of a sell right now. It's kind of like, well, I was in a niche market for a little while, and now I'm going to get into being the guru. Like, I'm going to be the consultant guy. And I have done one thing for the last 20 years with respect to this sphere, and that's it. But when you get into that guru side of things, that's when your credentials really sort of come into play. And no, I don't have a doctorate in psychology, but what I do have is a lot more experience with women and a much more varied experience and a much broader depth of experience than, say, a guy like Jordan Peterson or some other guys that maybe some of you have a lot of respect for. So when I listen to Peterson talk about dominance hierarchies when it comes to men, I agree 100%. I believe that, and he has already backed me up on this, not me like specifically, but he has backed up my definition, my broadened, expanded definition of what hypergamy ought to be. The only problem is he sticks to one side of it. Because he doesn't know enough about the other side, which is, of course, alpha seed and beta need. He doesn't know very much about the alpha seed side of things beyond what he's been told, what he sees, what he reads, what he can engage with. He's only ever, to my knowledge anyways, has only ever really been with his wife, who was his girlfriend, who he met when he was 8 years old. To me, that's one-itis. To me, that's very blue pill, because he's stuck in that one. Oh man, Periscope is crashing on me. Sorry, guys. Yeah, okay, I see it. That's fine. I can just remove it. I'm going to kill Periscope. If you guys are watching Periscope right now, it's hanging on me, so I apologize. You guys can come over to YouTube. That's probably the better place to go anyways. So I'm going to pull that off. So anyways, let me just complete this thought here. I think that a lot of the stuff that he talks about with respect to men is pretty accurate. But the problem that I have with him is that the dominance hierarchies, and later he started calling them competence hierarchies, which I also agree with, have a lot more to do with the alpha seed side of hypergamy, and not as much, or not only, about the beta need side of things. You see, what's happening here is, and this is very common to a lot of guys who have blue pill thinking and who have a sort of a beta male outlook on life, is that they tend to there's actually a psychological term for this, but it's the women are wonderful psychological thing. There is go look that up. Actually, go to Google and look up the women are wonderful psychological dynamic or something like that. That, of course, they would never dare to call it a disorder, but it's this bias. It's a conscious bias that if a woman is saying something, that she is to be more believed. I mean, we saw that in the Believe All Women hashtag and the Me Too stuff that was going on. But it's much more easy to believe women because we want to, particularly men. We have a protector dynamic, an evolved protector dynamic that predisposes us to listen to the vocal intonations of women, right? To want to believe like women are just all naturally wonderful, and that's why we believe it. And I think what happens is when you live your life like that, which, by the way, the village, what I call the village, the gynocentric social order, your education, all focus on what I've called in the past feminine correctness. And that plays upon that same dynamic, which is the women are wonderful dynamic. And so when I have a disagreement with respect to what Dr. Peterson says, it's usually founded in those things, because I don't think he has the experience to really know like what the true sort of visceral, carnal nature of women is and what it can do. And because he's never had that. And pretty much every time I've listened to him talk about his wife and how they got together, all of the ideas of dominance hierarchies flies out the window. So men are supposed to be conscious about competence and competency hierarchies and dominance hierarchies when they're slugging it out in the real world. But when you get married, you need to find somebody you can negotiate with. And that's where I draw the line. Because as you know, one of the quotes I'm known for is you cannot negotiate desire. If you go to my website and you look at the lead post, the brand new essay I just posted yesterday, it's not even 24 hours old. I go into a little bit of detail about that. I analyzed a little situation between Steve Jobs of Apple and Joan Baez, who he used to date. Joan Baez was 41 at the time, and Steve Jobs was 27, and he was easily one of the most richest guys in the world at that time, and became, of course, probably stayed that way for a very long time as well. But go check that out because it sort of relates to what we're going to talk about today. It's kind of like a subconscious understanding, I guess. Now, well, I don't want to get too far off track here, but those are the main reasons or the main problems that I have with Peterson, particularly when it comes to this sort of Oprah, Dr. Phil kind of standard pablum that you get when it comes to how do you have a good relationship? What do you look for in a wife? Because all the Lost Boys generation, this very beta male generation, wants to have their hands held. They want somebody to give them 12 rules for life, which he was happy to do. They want to have somebody sort of spoon feed them, what it is that they should do so they can have a long-term marriage and have kids and all of these, this idealistic ideas that they get in their head because they've been brought up in a blue pill world or in a world that has conditioned them in a blue pill way, which is sort of the euphemism that we use. So everything's all fine and great until we get to the point where he says you need to negotiate with your wife. Find a woman that you can negotiate with. That right there tells me he has a blue pill beta male thinking. That's why. So there you go. That's your $5 answer. That's your $100 answer to a $5 question. And let's see. Geez, man, you guys are hitting me right out the gate. Stop it. Gunlock says, do you think blue pill alpha men that turn beta are conscious of the shift in the mindset? No, not at the beginning. I'll tell you why. We're going to come back to that. That's a good question, but Gunlock, trust me, I'm going to answer that in due course here. And then, gosh, why am I even trying to keep up with you guys today? You guys are good today. God damn. Oh, damn. Let's see. Find Rollo on the next. Yeah, Greyhound King. I would do it. I would do it. Have a mullet, right? Big old gold chain. I have to borrow some gold chains, I guess, from John. Is it beta to talk smack? No, actually. I'll explain to you why here in just a moment. Most guys who I would consider beta males, or I think a lot of people would consider beta, are guys that struggle with understanding how to relate with other men in a masculine way, a conventionally masculine way. And that is something that's very important to remember in all of this, is that when we talk about what is alpha and what is beta, when we get into this difficulty, when we don't know what to talk about, when I go and I see somebody who says, there's no such thing as alpha or there's no such thing as beta, it's usually from guys who don't understand conventional masculinity, who don't understand the behaviors, the mindsets, why certain things would be considered more conventionally masculine and some things are more conventionally feminine, because they are the product of a generational shift or a generational social engineering program, really. I mean, that's not to put too fine a point on it. So let's see, what else did you say here? Noel says, can you agree that killing the beta is more of a lifelong journey instead of a quick fix? Yeah, but it's not an endless process, put it that way. How would you go about this journey if you were beta? Well, I'm going to tell you today. Look at you guys, man. Class is in session. You guys are asking. There's no such thing as a dumb question, unless you're trolling, and then it's a dumb question. Okay, so the first thing I have to get to today is we've got to talk about our terms. We've got to understand, like, the first thing is if we're going to talk about what's a beta male and what's an alpha male, we have to understand that there is such a thing as an alpha male and there is a beta male. Now, I have to sort of rewind the tape here and go back to an episode of Joe Rogan where he was talking to Adam from Adam Ruins Everything. And I apologize, I don't know what Adam's last name is. And I think pretty much everybody watching this stream probably realizes which or understands which episode I'm talking about. And if you don't, just go to Joe Rogan. Just go into YouTube, type in Joe Rogan, and then put like alpha male or Adam Ruins Everything, and you will get to that clip right there, because Adam Ruins Everything. And I don't know if the guy is gay, but he's very effeminate for a guy who is like, is making movies or not making videos. And he's the guy, he's the blonde haired kind of pudgy kid that makes these videos about, he debunks things. He's kind of like, he tries to be like Mythbusters, only a little bit more funny, and within the space of like a 6 or 7 minute video, that's what he tries to do. And maybe it's a musical or something too, right? But during his conversation with Joe Rogan, Joe and him were talking about stuff, and then he offers this up. Adam offers this up. He says, yeah, one of the things we debunked was the alpha male stereotype or the alpha male nonsense that you see online. And I'm like, oh, my interest is piqued. And he was referring to a video that he had done where he tried to debunk. He says, oh, well, science has debunked the idea of alpha males and beta males in human beings. And of course, then he goes on and does what I would expect from people who are this is the standard way of sort of discrediting or disqualifying the idea of the alpha male. The first thing they say is, well, human beings are not like silverback gorillas. Human beings are not like wolves on the Arctic tundra, right? Well, human beings are not like lions on the Serengeti. They are different animals, and we shouldn't, and I'll tell you what's funny is this is the same mindset that will go and say, well, these two little tsetse flies, they have homosexual sex, so therefore it's a universal in the animal kingdom, and therefore homosexuality is natural. They'll say that. But they won't say, oh, well, we see alpha males in pretty much every species. We see alpha males or alpha male behavior, what we can contextually call alpha male behavior, in humans and in primates. But that's all been debunked. But if you want to have some scientific proof in the animal kingdom of homosexuality, there's lots of stuff to verify that. It's like this convenient debunking, or this convenient use of whatever the science is to sort of like promote a particular bias or a particular, make it align with whatever their pet ideology happens to be. So I've stated this before, as like the same people who will complain that like these little girls are doing these very suggestive sexualized dances and pole dancing, and they're all of like 6 or 7 years old, and they're dancing like to Beyonce or something like that, and they're doing these very, I've seen strippers who can't do the kind of stuff that these little girls are doing. They'll say, oh, it's terrible, they're sexualizing these kids, There's the same set that will go and say, oh, this kid who's 9 years old and he's dressing in drag, he's wonderful, yes, we love this guy. Or he'll go on Good Morning America and what is it, Michael, I forget the guy's name, Michael Strahan will be like, oh man, Desmond is amazing, yes he is. Like, how is that any different than a 9-year-old kid? Well, because it aligns with a certain mindset, which is the same thing that goes on with a guy like Adam Ruins Everything. And so he says there's no such thing as an alpha male. There's no such thing as a beta male. We're all just individuals and we're unknowable. And I wanted to say this from the outset here, because I don't think I've ever put this on well, I put it in some essays, but I've never said this on any channel, is that when guys do that, when they say, hey, you know what? People are people, man. We're all individuals, brother. Nobody's the same. We don't have all the same wants and desires, and we're all unique little snowflakes. And with that, the idea of snowflake, the term snowflake comes when you describe like a SJW or a, whatever, a sort of, I don't even know what to call it now, right? A snowflake, a progressivist, I guess, social justice warriors. Ask me sometime about what I think about the idea or the term social justice warrior sometime. But the idea is that it's a fallacy of individualism, that just because we are human beings, that we're all unique little snowflakes and we don't have any commonalities, and there's nothing that really, we're more. What's fascinating to me is this same mindset is like, we're more alike than we're different. But then if I say, okay, that's great. There are alpha males and there are beta males. There's hypergamy. There's a female nature. There's a male nature. Then they'll go, no, no, no. We're all individuals. We've evolved above all this animal stuff. But you just said a minute ago that that we're all the same and we have all. So what are we? Are we all just straight up individuals? Or are we all the same? Well, it depends on what you're talking about. Whatever aligns with whatever I want it to align with. And so when I hear people say, well, people are people and you can't really understand the bullshit. Okay. There is a human nature. And I'll tell you what, man, when I was a younger kid, when I was a younger man, when I was in my 20s, I would have told me to go to hell. I would have said, there's no, so I would have agreed with that until I learned a little bit more, until I picked up on evolutionary biology, evolutionary psychology, anthropology, sociology, all of the ologies and all of the isms that I had to study to really understand, intersexual dynamics and where I'm at and what I've been writing about for a very long time. The red pill is a very broad, a very broad field. So it's almost impossible to be an expert in every aspect of it. In fact, I'll be the first to say, hey, I'm not an expert in all of this. I'm pretty damn good at a lot of this stuff. But if somebody says, hey man, I'm an evolutionary psychologist. If I was to talk to say God Sod, and God, if you're watching, please, God, if you're watching, I would really love to have an interview with you. I really love to talk to you. You're the only guy that I would be starstruck by, because I really think that he's got his shit together and he knows, he's as far as evolutionary psychology, evo bio, and a lot of other stuff, I think he's just spot on about a lot of things. And so I'm not saying that I have that kind of that degree of wisdom, that knowledge that he does. I'm pretty good. I try to stay on top of it. I read him. I read a lot of people, but there's a lot to consider in this. So when people say, well, there's no such thing as human nature, there's no such thing as an alpha, there's no such thing as a beta, we're all above that. It's usually coming from the idea of individualism. And a lot of guys have a problem with that, particularly, well, I shouldn't say not, I'd say both sides of sort of the political and ideological spectrum have a problem with that. Because if I say we have a human nature, or women are this way, or women's mating strategy tends to be this, or women and men have natural proclivities. We have we have conventionally masculine traits, and we have conventionally feminine traits. And, we have evolved mental firmware, which I'm fond of saying. We have our hardware, of course, which is our bodies. I've talked about this quite a bit, which is instinct, emotion, and reason. If I get into those things, I say, here's the commonalities and here are the big differences. And I, of course, try to emphasize this as much as I can, that men and women are different. But we also have natural proclivities. We also have a natural or an evolved nature to what we are. A lot of people don't like that. They want to say, well, we're just these, we've evolved above that. We're beyond that. And the reason I'm even getting into this is because it's very important to understand what the disagreements are when it comes to those terminologies, because a lot of people will just use what Adam has used, which is what Royce once called the argument from etymology, which is just the names. Like you try to make these comparisons to things in the animal universe, or like you say, well, when guys who dislike the idea of alpha males or beta males, when they try to debunk that, or they try to dismiss that because they don't want to get into the conversation about what makes a man alpha and what makes a man beta, they don't want to talk about that. So they just go, oh, that's just silly and unreasonable and stupid, because science has already debunked that. And yeah, from a perspective of human beings are not silverback gorillas, yeah, you're right. They're not. Neither are human beings an analogy to, lions on the Serengeti. They're not either. That's the argument from etymology. Then there's also the argument from individualism, which is we're all above this. We don't have any real natures because we have free will. And so you get that from sort of the tradcon side of things. And then sometimes you get it from the more liberal, progressive, snowflake, SJW side of things as well. But for a broader sense, like when I would say most conservatives probably agree with the idea of alpha and beta because it sort of fits into their more of a religious context. But for sort of a liberal side of things, you can scream till you're blue in the face that men and women are different, but yet we still have commonalities, and we have evolved, I guess, predilections for why we are, for what our natures actually are. They're happy to agree with you as long as what you're saying aligns with whatever their pet ideology happens to be. So, all that said, when somebody disagrees with you about the idea of alpha, about the idea of beta, remember these arguments, because it will help you go, okay, I know where that guy's at. I know whether I can have a conversation with this guy or I can't. And so guys will ask me all the time. They'll say, well, man, I want to unplug my friend, or he's going down the wrong way, or he's going to marry this girl, and my brother's, he's going to hang himself if he sticks with this girl. And I try to give him your book and I try to unplug him, but he won't take it. Or if I say alpha or beta, he blows me off. You have to be able to sort of read a person using your red pill lens and say, is this somebody that I can actually talk to? And I do this all the time now. It's sort of second nature for me now. So when I see Adam ruins everything, talk to Joe Rogan about alpha males. And of course, Joe Rogan's like, but you have to agree that there are such a thing as alpha males. And he just puts Adam on the spot, and just like, not even trying, just asking just basic questions. And he just folds like a cheap, whatever, like a lawn chair, right? And you should just go watch that. And that, I think, is, that exchange between Joe Rogan and Adam really kind of sums up the idea of what people, when they try to debunk these things, they're really standing on shaky ground. So that said, I've also said this, is when we're talking about alpha and beta, these are abstract terms. So what makes an alpha, what makes a beta, there are concrete, objective things that we can say, that guy's more alpha. In fact, our subconscious, our hindbrains, men and women's, already understand dominance hierarchies. We already understand that a dominant male, or even maybe like sort of an overbearing, dominant female, how she acts or what she does or what that guy does. Is this guy an alpha male? Is he the sergeant of the troop, or is he one of the followers? Is he something? And I think we sort of have this intrinsic understanding of where those dominance hierarchies are. Go to a gym, and you will like a big gym in a big city, you will understand very quickly what I'm talking about. And it's intrinsic. It's something that's part of our mental firmware, where we understand, somebody who is a little bit more outspoken. It doesn't necessarily, I should say this, you don't necessarily have to be an extrovert to be more alpha. You can be alpha and be an introvert. It's just that you express that alphaness in sort of a different way. Beta is the same thing. In fact, I would say that really defining what makes for a beta male is almost easier than an alpha, because we all like to think that we're alpha. Guys, whenever I've asked that, like when I first put out the chapter in my book called Alpha, and I talk about Corey Worthington as like being the alpha Buddha or an ideal, he's like sort of this Zen like alpha, like that's just his natural, like you throw something at him and he acts in a natural alpha way. It's untrained. It's in behavioral psychology, it would be called unconditioned response. That what like Corey Worthington was not is anymore, but was when he was a teenager, I would say the epitome of that unconditioned alpha response. Well, guess what? You can do the same thing with beta. And so a lot of people, I'm going to get to this today too, because a lot of people ask me, do you think that alpha is a genetic thing? Is alpha or is beta a genetic thing too? And I think there might be something to that, but I think that you can, just like anything else, you can train yourself to act in different ways and to believe in different ways and to sort of exhibit something that's different. And if that becomes who you are, if you internalize that, then yeah, you can learn to be beta, you can learn to be alpha. Now, are you innately alpha? That's a question. I don't know. I think it sort of happens on the individual and what your background is and what your circumstances are. Yes, you could hit the genetic lottery, but there are plenty of guys who would say, oh, look at that guy, he's alpha. And then you see him dressed in a pink tutu and he's coming on to guys. He might even still be alpha, but we're not going to, like, our hindbrain is not going to register that guy as alpha. Same thing goes for beta males. So when you see that beta male guy, and again, this is all kind of like by order of degree. I mean, I can sit here and hey guys, let's all make fun of guys who do this. right? We can all do the, was it the beta male, the new male grimace, right? That somebody sent me these. I think it was Royce before he got his blog cut off by WordPress. Where he did this, he did a couple of posts about the new male fear grimace, which was sort of an analogy. Here we go with the animal kingdom, right? An analogy with like, I guess chimpanzees will do this when they're fearful, when they're showing submission. Great, that's going to be the thumbnail for this fucking thing. Hey, it's Rollo. But that's going to be the fear grimace is sort of analogous to a beta male posture. And although we laugh at that and we joke at that, there's a bit of truth to that. That might be something that is a default, or something in our natural monkey brains say, oh, hey, that's what I need to do to show submission to something else. Or, for whatever reason, that seems to be a habit that what we would consider mostly beta male guys doing. That's what they do when the camera's on them. Why? Well, why would they do that? Why do you think, like, let's just play a little theoretical game here. Why would it be that a guy that we would consider, classically be a beta male kind of guy, what the look is. And then by the way, physiognomy is real. There's sort of a look to these guys, a behavior, a mannerism, a style, I guess, that sort of says this guy is what Royce would call a herb, which is a herbivorous man. And then there's also, guys who are just like simps, or guys who we would say are beta males. And again, we register this, we understand this sort of, innately, instinctively, we get it. But why would it be that a guy would do the beta male fear grimace just when a camera comes on him? And those are like, again, you guys want to know what my process is when I talk about like connecting dots. This is how I do this, right? Like, why would that be? Why they're not in this? Hopefully, I don't know if they are, but I don't think that they are in the presence of a very overbearing alpha male. But when the cell phone camera shows them, clicks a picture of them, and they're eating cereal, or they got a new toy, like a new Xbox, or they got something, or what is it, like, so the new Star Wars movie? Yeah, the new Star Wars movie. Click. Well, why? Why would? And even if that's not their intent, that's the way our brains read that. That's a beta male. That guy doing that those behaviors, that look. And even if we don't like say, oh, well, chimpanzees do the same thing. We don't think that doesn't have, like, we're not cognitively thinking, oh, that kind of looks like a chimp. Maybe we are. Somebody, you get enough people and somebody will figure that out. And they do online, because we have access to so many people. Right. But you have to ask yourself, well, it's just a camera. There's not like some big, like, Arnold Schwarzenegger's not behind him going, hey, well, and he's like, hey. That's not happening. So why is it that that's a natural default? Those are questions like I can't answer that. I don't know. Maybe there's something to it. Maybe so hopefully we do. So this is the first article that is on my goddamn butter coffee. The first article that's in my show notes here, and I've sort of been building up to this so that you guys can understand what an alpha and a beta is. And then why did you become that guy? Because I would suggest, okay, so let's just say you guys came to this video and you go, I want to know why I'm a beta, or why does Rollo think he's a beta? Why did he put that on? Like I'm doing that, right? So I can tell you this from experience, that, and I'm not too proud to admit it, but I have been very much blue pill, very much beta in my younger days. I shifted. I had a personality shift as a result of kind of a trauma, I guess. And I would say that during my rock star 20s, my early 20s through about 24, 25, somewhere around there, I would have referred to myself, and this is just me being red pill Rollo, as being alpha. I don't know if I was like super alpha. I wasn't like, yoked and like what people would think of as like a stereotypical alpha, but like I was getting laid on the regular, and I understood women, and I understood that what I was doing was working. And I understood that the more sort of alpha that I acted and that I behaved, I got the results, and I got the reciprocal reactions that I was looking for. So I would have said that, okay, I was more alpha back then. And then I would say that somewhere along the line, well, certainly when I was with the BPD girl, I was definitely beta. I definitely sort of dropped back. And then again, after a very traumatic experience, I'm like, you know what? I don't want to live like that ever again. And I decided to change my mind about myself. I tell you guys this all the time. When guys say, well, how do I change? You change your mind about yourself first. That's the first thing that you need to do. That's the first step towards mental point of origin, by the way, is to say, you know what, I'm done. I'm changing my mind about myself, and I don't like who I was, and I'm going to be something different. I'm going to do something different. That's why I say you can learn these things. Maybe a lot of that is behavioral, but I think that it can also be there's also a genetic component to it as well. So we'll get into that here in just a second. But my first question on my notes here is are the terms alpha and beta relevant for human beings? And I do believe that they are, particularly from a perspective that that they are contextual, that they are abstracts. We know what they are when we see them, when we see it. And even if we can't put our finger on it, even if we meet somebody for the first time, I think that there's something in our lizard brains that sort of sizes that person up and says that person's alpha and that person's beta. And when we talk about how women know in the first 5 minutes whether they're going to bang you or not, I would say that might be true, but I would also say that what's more true is women know in the first 5 minutes of meeting you whether they won't bang you in the beginning. So when you're first introduced and a woman says, oh, there's something in her brain, nope, that's probably more of an automatic response than, oh, I'm really going to get with this guy. Man, I mean, you see a guy like that, but I would say more often than not, if a woman knows that she's not going to sleep with you, that changes the nature of your conversation and changes the nature of your interaction with that person when you meet them for the first time. So I do think that they're accurate. I do think that they're accurate, but only as abstracts. They are placeholder terms. So when I'm using beta today, make sure that you remember this. They are abstracts. They are abstracts so that we can use these terms to get to bigger ideas. So that's the first place I wanted to start with you guys today. Let me see, what else do I have here today? I'm sorry, some of you guys are getting away from me in the chat. Let me see. Red Pill FM says, is it beta to talk smack? We'll talk about that in just a moment. Can you agree that killing the beta is more of a thing? Okay, well, I'm going to get to that's already in my notes. And let's see. Assange Mohammed says, what is your take on beta male view of BuzzFeed? Oh, you mean the I saw that actually when I was doing the research for this video. I saw the BuzzFeed, this is what a beta male is. That we're going to get to that towards the end here, but I'll just give you a quick preview, is that in this society, in modern Western society, I think that there is a push for more beta men. And that's as a result of, I would say, 4 generations of social engineering to remove men and to remove masculinity. That kind of gets into a little bit off topic, because I usually save that for when I'm talking about like what's happened to masculinity when people ask me those questions. Is Stoicism an alpha trait? It can be, but only if you are alpha to begin with. So hear what I'm saying? There are plenty of beta males who go, I'm going to be stoic. There's a lot of MGTOW betas that I'm going to go read, what is it? Marcus Aurelius. I'm going to be a stoic. Good for you. But the problem with Stoicism is it's not something you can sustain for very long. Well, I mean, you can sustain it, but it's either that or you're not going to have any emotional side to you. You're going to be Mr. Spock at some point, and you're going to be proud that you're Mr. Spock. And that, first of all, I don't think that it is entirely possible to live a life of complete rationality, as odd as that's going to sound. And I don't think it's possible to live a life of complete 100%, total logic, like I said, Mr. Spock. And that was actually that was kind of the interesting thing about the original Star Wars series, is when you look at, or Star Wars, oh man, I just did the cardinal sin. Sorry. No, that's the thing about the original Star Trek series, which is the sort of the counterbalance of Captain Kirk, who was definitely an alpha. In fact, I'm glad you brought that up, because Captain Kirk was really the alpha archetype. He was the guy who was like the happy-go-lucky guy, but he got shit done, and he took off his shirt, and if he had to fight, he would fight, and he would make the tough decisions, and he was, he could be reckless when he wanted to be, but he was also a good leader, and he also could inspire, and he was also like, we have what I've written about this, and I know this is going to sound really Jungian, but these are sort of like archetypes And it's like sort of this ideal that we have of what's the guy that is the top of the heap, right? I'm going to be all Jordan Peterson here in a second. What's the guy that is at the top of the heap? For me, anyways, for my understanding, a guy like a character, and it has to be a character because it's almost impossible to find in real life, is a Captain Kirk. That's one kind of alpha male archetype. There's also the Han Solo kind, where he's sort of the scoundrel, but he's still alpha. It's like I've said this before. There is the Superman, and then there's Batman. Both of those are alphas, but they do it, and the context is different. They express that alpha nature in a different way. The same thing applies to betas. So there's guys who are like sort of the lovable beta, the hapless lovable beta. A good example of this, again, I'm going to use superheroes here. If you could look at like Peter Parker, if you look at Spider-Man, when Peter Parker is just plain old Peter Parker, and I mean this from like the olds, like back in the 60s when Stan Lee was writing the stories, he was kind of a beta. He's kind of a wimp. And so the reason why Spider-Man is such a great timeless story is because it tells the same thing. It tells a very common tale of a beta male fantasy, which is, if I had power, this is what I would do with that power. If I could go from being a beta chump to being Superman or the Hulk, or going from being Peter Parker to Spider-Man, or if you even look at it this way, look at Clark Kent versus Superman. So Clark Kent is kind of this mild-mannered reporter for a major daily metropolis newspaper or something like that, right? That's a different character, right? He goes from being sort of this wimpy kind of beta guy that women wouldn't pay attention to, other than the fact that he's got a chiseled jaw and he's just hiding behind these glasses. Right? But hear me out, though. The archetype is that he goes from being this beta to jumps into a telephone booth, Superman, and he comes off, and suddenly he's the guy that goes from being like zero to hero in the blink of an eye. Same thing with really, you could say the same thing about Captain America, because Captain America used to be the skinny kid who got passed over because he couldn't even go fight in World War II because he had flat feet, right? Or he was a wimp who got his butt kicked all the time. But he went from that to being like the alpha guy. So you've got the beta male archetype there, going from that to the alpha archetype. And usually what happens is what most beta males believe of themselves is that if they had unlimited power, if they had like a superpower, they would always use it for good. That they would say, you know what, I hate those, because that's another thing. That's another stereotype, another archetype that we apply to alphas, is that they're abusive, that they are domineering, that it's might makes right. They'll just smash you over the head. Or all of the bullies that beta males complain about in high school are all the same. They're all the jocks. They're all the guys who get the girls, the guys who are on the football team, and they give them wedgies in the locker room and leave them in the trash can upside down. Right? That's the If you go and you look at Revenge of the Nerds, remember that old movie? You look at Revenge of the Nerds, and you see beta males taking revenge on alpha males. They love that. That is you want to sell a lot of whatever, find a way to tap into that revenge fantasy of beta male men. And that can be for other guys, for other alpha guys. It can be like, that girl, she's a gold digger, and look, she's she doesn't she didn't get the money, or she lost in the end. Like, beta males love that, man. That is a classic that's a classic sell, because they want to feel powerful, and they're not powerful. They can't feel powerful, because that's not either, well, I wasn't born that way. No, that's not how you learn to be. You can come out of that, but you won't, because you enjoy being there and you enjoy the fantasy, right? That's why you get like, subs on Reddit like pro revenge. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, go and look at that. It's the #1 tag on YouTube for MGTOWs right now. And it's not just, I don't want to wipe it off on just them, because there's other pro revenge stuff. It can be like employers and stuff like that, but it's r/pro revenge. Go look that up, and you'll see what I'm talking about, because it's red meat. It feels good. I can commiserate with my friends and pretend that I'm powerful, that I'm not the beta that I grew up to be, or that I am right now. And it's quite honestly, in the digital age, it's kind of scary. So just saying. What do you want, Chris? When was the first time you thought you made that transition from beta to alpha mindset in your life? I'll tell you. You want to know when I first thought that? Right after this. First time that I sort of realized that something had changed fundamentally in me was I had gone I was that beta male who moved to a different city to facilitate a relationship, and it was a high school relationship, and the girl who I thought was my one, who was going to be there, and we were going to, oh, well, she's the first girl to have sex with me, so this must be fate. It's that classic blue pill conditioning, right? Now, before I get into this, I think guys need to understand that there is a separation, mutual exclusivity between beta and blue pill and alpha and red pill. Okay. All of those are independent of one another. Remember that. I'll come back to it. So the first time I really figured out that something had changed about me was I used to be very invested in supporting women, or I've been told pretty much my whole life when I was younger that, oh, you got to be the friend first, and you got to have friendship, and and I never understood why, like, my best friend Mario was like nailing, he was 14 years old, and he was really good looking and very, very built. At 14, he looked more like he was 18 or 19, and he was nailing girls who were like 18 or 19. I was just like, holy crap. And the girls that I wanted to get with, who weren't even that old, he was getting with women when he was like in his mid-teens, and I couldn't even get his leftovers. And the girls that I would talk to and try to like chat up and everything, the only reason they want to talk to me is because they knew I was friends with him. And so, but I was like, oh, okay, sure, I'll help you out. I was like that until I ended up breaking up with my first girlfriend, of course. And people say, well, that must have been the catalyst. That's why Rollo is really the way he is. He had a bitter breakup, and this whole thing is one big elaborate get back, get even. No, it's not. But that's where that shift was right there, because it wasn't sort of like, oh, I became red pill. I decided that I wanted, that was the first time where I put myself as my mental point of origin. I didn't realize that I was doing it, but what I had done was, at that point, I'm like, fuck it, I don't care. I do not care anymore. And I wanted to do what I wanted to do. And at that time, that was get in a band, and I didn't care what I had to do to do it, and get in a band, play in a band, and hopefully the band does something and goes good. And if not, then at least I'm getting laid while I'm doing it. And that was really my intent. I do love music, don't get me wrong. And I've been a musician since I was 13 years old, but that was what motivated me to want to do that. And I did it very well. I got in. I wish I would have got in a little bit earlier. I graduated high school in 1986, and I did not start playing in the Hollywood scene until about 1989. Because that was about when I hit 21, and that's when I could actually go to clubs and I could drink. But literally, I spent my birthday in my first club and the first gig I was playing at. So, so yeah, that, I think it was then. But even then, I was still kind of like still clinging to the sort of blue pill, like beta chump kind of narrative. But when I started to realize that I was what women wanted to get with in those clubs, that's when things changed for me. So when when I got with the first girl who was a legitimate official swimsuit model, that's when things changed for me. That's when I decided I'm somebody else, because this is the caliber of women that I can get with. And I know people say, well, you're using women as the metric for your self-esteem. Well, yeah, the 21-year-old version of me definitely was. Definitely. And you know what? I was happy as a pig in shit too. And I have no regrets about any of that at that point. And I think I'm going to talk a little bit about sort of the duplicity that I hear from a lot of guys, particularly in the MGTOW crowd, but not just in them, certainly in the black pill and in tradcons too, because they say, well, you're just like, what's interesting is like for the MGTOW black pill set, they will say, well, you're using women as your metric for like your sense of self, or your and yeah, what probably was. They'll use, but here's the thing is like, and a lot of guys will do that too, but when you're getting it and when you're getting laid, you don't care. I don't give a rat's ass what this guy thinks of me. And it's the same thing that from a different angle that tradcons will use. It'll say, well, you're just having meaningless sex. It's that is the same, comes from the same energy, or some from the same place, that that you're using women as your primary, metric for who you are. Well, that's a lot more complicated than that. Okay, it's a lot more complicated than just saying, well, I can get laid with a swimsuit model and then later get laid with a Playboy centerfold. And it's not that I say, oh, well, that's just going to feed my ego and build my ego that much more. Because when you think in those terms, and I will say this here in just a second, when you think in terms of like, well, you're having meaningless sex or you're using women as your metric for your self-esteem, all of that, that criticism comes from a place of intrasexual combat. So when a guy, and this is classic beta male shaming of alpha males. Well, you have a lot of sex and girls really like you, but you're having meaningless sex. So disqualified. I guess you're done. Right. That comes from the tradcon side of things. You're having sex with all these girls and they really like you. We can see that. We can see that you have something going for you here, but you're only doing that because you make women the metric of your life. Same thing as, and where does that come from? It comes from a sense of wanting to disqualify somebody. That is, disqualification is the first form of intrasexual combat for men and women, I should say. So what happens is if you particularly on the World Wide Web, if I can say, well, that guy's having a lot of sex, but all of his sex doesn't count. Or if a woman says, oh, that girl looks really hot, but she's a slut and she's not really worth your investment, your parental investment or your long-term, future with that girl is probably not a good idea because she's a skank. But I'm here, I'm available. I know I have 2 kids and by 4 different fathers. And now, however that happened. And, I'm the better choice. Don't go for her. She's disqualified. Don't go for him. He's disqualified. He's a playboy. Well, hey, I even hear Jordan Peterson talk about that. Like, oh, these guys, these pickup artists think that they can live the Playboy lifestyle. Yeah, because a few of them are, not every one of them. But you know what? Even if you're not living the Playboy lifestyle, using the tools, using game, using red pill awareness, red pill theory, red pill awareness, being educated on those, understanding intrasexual dynamics, puts you in a better place. Maybe you're not like nailing girls left. Maybe your notch count is still, under 10, but it's better than 1 or none. So you've done a little bit. You might not be living the Playboy lifestyle, but you're living a better lifestyle than you were before. That's my thank you for the $20, Chris. That's when my transition was when I was living a better lifestyle than I was before as a result of changing my mind about myself. There you go. Very simple. Class is in session. Drape Tolman, is there truly such a thing as meaningless sex? We have sex for whatever reason. No, there's not. The only time somebody says you're having meaningless sex is when they're not having sex. Because as I was saying before, Drape Tolman, is that when somebody says you're having meaningless sex, they usually are saying that from a perspective of they see that you are reproductively successful with many women. You are able as a man to get with many women. You are able as a man to solve your reproductive problem and solve it very well because there's a lot of women who are waiting in line because they want to get with you, or at least that's the perception that like a beta male mindset has. I think one of the things that defines the beta male is that they have way more trouble solving their reproductive problems than an alpha male would. So when we talk about what makes for an alpha male, and I'm thinking of this from a conventional sense. Okay. When we say what's an alpha, what makes for an alpha, you'll hear a dozen different guys and a dozen different women will say something like, oh, he needs to be a leader of industry and he needs to be good with his kids and he's got to be a good father. And it's all these pro-social aspects of what makes a guy. And if they lean into something that seems a little bit more like controversial, it's usually tempered with like, well, he's got to be a go-getter. Well, what does that mean? Oh, he's got to kick people's ass. Well, I don't want to say that, but he's got to be he's going to be a type A person, right? That's what, where that came from? Where type A personality, that came from cardiologists. Because if you had a type A personality, that meant you had a higher incidence of heart disease, or you're more likely to have a heart attack because you're this type of person or you're not this type of person. That's where that comes from. And then of course everybody took it and ran and go, I'm a type A go-getter. No, that doesn't mean what you think it means, and probably means actually worse than what you think it means. Okay, let me back up just a second. I got a lot to get to today, guys. Your friend Nick Krauser talks about Sigma males and as lone wolves. What can you tell us about Sigma and Gamma? Well, it's a little out of the scope of this stream, but I'll be happy to tell you. The first of all, you have to understand where Nick got that, and I do like Nick. Don't get me wrong. I've had a really good relationship with Nick for a very long time. So when we talk about sigmas, the place to start with sigmas and lone wolves and stuff like that is don't start with Nick Krauser, start with Vox Day, because Vox Day is the one who came up with the sociosexual hierarchies. And I like another guy I really like is Vox. I always have. I think recently he's kind of gone off the deep end with respect to religion and politics and stuff, but that, that's what his pivot was. Okay. I still like him. I still think he has a lot to offer. And he used to have a blog called Alpha Game Blogspot or something like that. And I used to be like, we used to bounce ideas off each other back in the day, because that's what was cool, I guess, and what we were doing. But he came up with what were called sociosexual hierarchies. And so it was like alpha, beta, delta, gamma, which I'm sure some of you guys probably gamma is one that gets thrown around quite a bit. There was what was it, omega. These are the guys who are like the dregs. These are like the incels. An omega would be an incel, at least in my book. And then there's the sigmas, and the sigmas are kind of like, according to Vox, they're the lone wolves. They're like the James Dean character, right? He's a lone wolf. He goes his own way. He's a maverick, right? He goes his own way, and he says what he means and does what he says, means what he says. And it's the guy who is sort of the antisocial alpha. That's okay. Think of it this way: the alpha in sociosexual hierarchies, the alpha male would be more like a moralistic, like high-born, pro-social alpha would be like Superman. The sigma maybe more like Batman, I guess, like the vigilante. He's still a good guy, but he does things the wrong way, but for the right reasons, right? He's an alpha. Like women still want to get with Batman. They still want to bang him, right? They still want to bang Iron Man. Iron Man's another good example of that. Iron Man has the heart of gold, though. He's sort of like the Sigma with the heart of gold. The anti-heroes, the guys who are not pro-social. They don't necessarily have to be criminals, which alphas can be criminals. Betas can be criminals too. But we tend to, that's the thing about alpha males, is we tend to associate criminality and dark triad personality traits with alphas. Now, if you can take those and turn them into pro-social characteristics, personality traits, then great. That means you are you're not only are you a go-getter, you might be president, right? Or you might be mayor, or you might be the new leader at your church or something like that. And that's awesome, great. But that's not just like by order of degrees. So do I agree with the Sigma thing? Yeah, I do. Here's the thing is I distill it down, I think, a little bit more than Vox would. A lot of people say this, and I understand the criticism, so I'm going to say this, is that a lot of people who criticize Vox think that he made up these sociosexual hierarchies so that he could sort of wedge himself into the Sigma category. I don't only Vox. Don't ask me about that. Go ask Vox about that. And the other part is what was it? Royce used to have a post about kind of similar to this, like there's different degrees of like being an alpha or being a beta. And so he used to have this one was like a greater alpha, an alpha, a lesser alpha, a greater beta, a lesser beta, that, on down to whatever. Gamma is another one that we use quite a bit. And I think it really just more, rather than a category, I would say it sort of is a definition of a personality type. So, when I was, people say, well, why do you call yourself a lesser alpha? I want to know. Well, the reason I did that is because I referred to myself that once, and then somebody wouldn't let it go. And so the reason I define myself as a lesser alpha is because I don't think that I was really, if I was ever a greater alpha, it was back when I was 21, 22, and I was in the metal scene. Now I would call myself a lesser alpha because I understand intersexual dynamics a whole lot better, and I put myself into that role. And the only reason I call myself a lesser alpha is because that's what Royce, that's what I qualified for on Royce's old school blog post. So that's why. What did you say? Jamalode, how do you deal with dominance hierarchies around women? More specifically, other males being slightly more alpha than you in social situations has better conversation game, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so what you're asking me is the art of the AMOG. Jamalode, I'm going to, I don't, this is a little bit out of the scope of what I'm talking about today, but I have written an essay, as you might guess, I have written an essay about this, and it's called The Art of the AMOG, AMOG. Go to therationalmale.com, go to the little search engine right there. It is your best friend. Type in The Art of the AMOG, and this will answer every question that you have. Because I have given a lot of thought to that. Do a show on masculinity books. It's cringy. Yes, it is. You're right. And I'm about to talk about that. I'm not even going to do a show about it because I'm going to talk about it right now. So why do you think? Okay, here's the other thing is I have written several essays about being beta. I read one of the earliest ones I've written about was called Beta Game. And what happens in beta game is like I've said before, every guy that you know, every woman too, but like since we're talking about guys here, every guy that you know who is say 8 years old up to 80 years old has game. Does that sound a little whack? Well, the thing is every guy that you know has some idea as to how they are going, how best to go from being sexless and single to being in a relationship or getting laid or whatever, getting with a girl. How effective that game is the real question. So I'm serious. You would go to an 8-year-old or a 12-year-old or something, say, hey, Johnny, what's the best way to get a girlfriend? He'll tell you, man. He probably has a very elaborate idea of what, because he's learned this from the time he's 5 years old. Well, you got to hold their hand, and you got to carry their books home from school, and you got to do these things, and you really got to love her, and you got to commit, and you got to be a good communicator. And everything that his single mother told him that Johnny, when you get older, this is what you need to do. All of that stuff will all flow out because those kids, a kid as young as 10 or 12 years old is waiting to tell you that, because any little girl in earshot, I would do this. That's what he's waiting for. So remember that when we're talking about game. So when I talk about betas, again, goes back to sort of terminology and referencing and stuff like that. When I talk about beta males, it is not an insult. Don't think that is an insult. Okay. Everybody throws this at me. Oh, Rollo, you hate betas. How come you hate beta? Why? You just use that as an insult. That's an invective for you, isn't it? No, it's not. I'm telling you, it's a designation. It's what my hindbrain and probably about 1 billion other guys' hindbrains are telling them about your personality and the way that you present yourself, the way that you talk, the way that you type online. Everything if you're beta, it oozes out your fingers. It oozes out your facial expressions. It oozes out of your vocal intonations. You will do things as a beta or as an alpha that you are completely unaware of, that other people who might be sensitive to it figure it out, or even if we're not, something about our subconscious and our peripheral awareness picks up on. Girls certainly pick up on it. Remember what I said before is like if a woman, within the first 5 minutes of meeting you, she knows she won't sleep with you. That's why, because there's something that trips something that's wrong on her. So I've said this before. I think it's very important to remember this too, and this is what I wanted to sort of wrap into this section of my notes here. Is that guys will do things subconsciously. We talk in a certain way, we present ourselves and we dress in a certain way. That we're comfortable. I don't like what was it? Was it Tanner Guzzi has a great book called The Appearance of Power, and he's always been about, like, people have thrown so many rocks at Tanner, and I've locked horns with Tanner too. But one of the things that I think he is unfairly kind of like attacked for is that, like, guys will say, and you probably heard this, like, guys will say, well, a real man doesn't care how he looks. He doesn't care how he presents himself because he's a real man. People just get up. They understand. That doesn't matter if he's the salt of the earth. If he's a real man, he's a real man. And we understand that. And it doesn't matter if he's in jeans and a t-shirt. He can walk right up to a funeral and be just fine. right? He can go to a wedding in jeans and t-shirt and everything will be just fine, right? He can go into church on Sunday in a jeans and t-shirt and he don't care because he's a real man. And it's all of these, like, people care about the way that they present themselves. Obviously, go get a tuxedo. I don't care about the way I look. No, you will go and do something. I'm going to go to prom. No, I'm going to do it in shorts and a tuxedo top, right? And that'll make for some good pictures, won't it? So I don't think that people really realize that's just appearance, right? That's how you dress. There's other things you do, like your type, whatever your alpha or your beta-ness, will sort of ooze out of you in some way. How you, and again, it doesn't have to be how you look. It's how you present yourself, how you talk. Like right now, I am just, even if you if you turn the sound off right now and you saw what I'm doing and I'm gesticulating, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. Or if you didn't even understand, like say you didn't understand English and you understand like my vocal intonations and I'm telling you something, or if I'm really animated, you know when I'm pissed off and you know when I'm adding a pregnant pause, right? You know when I do those things. There's something that picks up and we get into the flow of communicating and everything. And that's just sort of how I go about doing that. Now, if I was like this and I said, hey guys, I'm going to talk about being beta male today. I don't know how to get to do this, but okay, well, this is what I think a beta is, and this is what I think alpha is. If I did that all day long, you would be like, okay, there's something wrong with this dude. Or that would, well, because you already know me. So you would say, well, there's something wrong with Rollo. Maybe he's depressed. Maybe he's upset, right? There's something incongruent with the way he normally presents himself. Well, a lot of the times, like when you switch, when you unplug yourself from the matrix, when you decide to change your mind about yourself, that comes out in different behaviors. So I tell guys when I talk to guys who are like awakened while married, well they go like, I need to get my Rollo, how do I get my wife to have sex with me again? What I tell them is I say, you need to make a mental change. You need to say, look, I'm going to break up with my wife. You break up with her here. I'm not saying, go sign papers and divorce her. I'm just saying you need to say, okay, from here on out, she's just my roommate and I'm going to go do the things that I'm going to do. And at the end of like a certain set period of time, if she's somebody that I want to still be with, then maybe I'll let her be in my life. And you sort of have that change. And you can't do it like that. Like if I said, okay, you know what you need to do? You need to just like, okay, today you're not you anymore. You're alpha you. You're asshole you. You're dark triad you. If I just said that and you made that change right there on dime, people would be like, what the fuck is wrong with him? You know what, you're trying to be somebody you're not. You're a poser, man. That's not who you really are. Why are you trying to act like somebody you're not? That's what you would get. Why? Because your behaviors, what you're manifesting out of yourself, is not congruent with what people expect of you. It takes time to have a real personal change. It does, like I was saying before, when I switched from being like sort of beta high school Rollo to being sort of alpha rock star Rollo in my 20s, we're talking about a change that took, I'll say, 18 till I was 21. So you're looking at about 4 years right there. It took a little while to do that. And so when I finally got, well, I guess I'm not that same person anymore. I could go look back on myself or look back on old pictures or talk to people I used to know back when I was in high school or old friends. And maybe I still have a relationship with them. Maybe I don't. But the fact remains that my behaviors, what comes out of me as my personality, changes. And there's nothing you could really do about that. That's why I say don't make that immediate change and say, oh, well, I'm going to the gym, bitch. You just say, oh, I'm going to go. I'll see you later. I come back. You make a habit of it. And then you change, because that seems genuine when it seems authentic. And we need to talk about authenticity today too. So we're going to get into that as well. So long story short here. So here's my point. My point is this, is that when you do those changes, if you are a beta right now, don't feel like I'm coming down on you. I've written an essay called Don't Hate the Beta. Literally, don't hate the beta. Go on therationalmill.com, type in Don't Hate the Beta, and you can read that, because I saw that happening early on. I don't want you to get put off by what I say because you think I'm insulting you. Well, you're a beta. That's what you're going to hear. Like, you're a simp. You're a cuck. You're a nerd. I mean, there's a million different. You're an AFC, right? There's another one. There's all kinds of things. Like people will say, well, that's that. I remember when I was called a nerd, or I could be called I still get called a geek now and then, like a closet geek. And I remember when that was like a real insult in high school. Now, not so much. In fact, it's cool to be a geek, right? Oh, you're a geek? Really? Yeah. You like Captain America? Boy, those movies are great. or that's in 2019. You go back to 1985, you like comic books. What's the matter with you? You're going to be a virgin forever. That's what they would tell you. So times change, people change, things change. Like all those guys who were like computer nerds and, programming and coding, like now especially after COVID, everybody wants to be a coder, right? Because there's money in it. Oh, Jeff Bezos, yeah, he's a nerd. He's the richest man in the world, but he's a nerd. Blue pill, very much blue pill, very much beta, richest man in the world. So it doesn't, just because you are beta, that's a designation. So as far as I'm concerned, other people are going to throw, you're a cock, you're a beta. Tell them to go fuck off. Okay. Beta is a designation. It's not a bad thing. It's not a good thing. It's just what you are right now. Okay. So, let's move along. I think you guys are really liking this one today. Boy. What is this one? Oh, Brian Porter. Wow, I've not seen you before, sir. Thank you for joining us. How do you game and alpha and beta work together? Funny you should ask that. We're going to get to it. Let's see, masculine. Okay, so we're going to talk about how masculinity fits into all of this, and this sort of goes back to what's his Lungu Stefan. He says, talk about the Mask of Masculinity book. It's actually, it's funny, the Mask of Masculinity is a documentary, and I have talked about that in an old it's actually an essay that was in I think I put it in. Yeah, I put it in Preventive Medicine. It's called Vulnerability, and I talk about how masculinity is something that is sold to us by a feminine-centric society as being inauthentic. And we're going to get into authenticity here in just a second, as soon as I go back up a touch here and make sure I covered everybody here. Tio, thanks for that 10 whatever Belgian dollars. Says BGN. Keep it up, Rollo. You should get Corey Wayne on a show sometime. Maybe. I've looked him up a couple times. I wouldn't be against it, put it that way. Nick Krauser, Jam. Okay, I think I'm caught up. Am I caught up? Oh, shit. Of course, I say that, and then 2 more come in. See how you guys are. This is not a variety show. You know that. Chase says, betas and waiting and saving the best are reminders of the man the church was raising me to be. Yeah. Ooh, man. Thanks for those. Dalrock's notes the beta and waiting quite frequently. Yeah, he did. That was actually the title of this, original title of this this live stream here today, and I'm going to talk about that here right as we get into authenticity. Thanks for that $10, my friend. Yeah, here's the other thing about religious betas. Oh, and then Chris says, in your opinion, who in, say, Hollywood is more alpha? Okay, well, we can get to the art. I think I talked about archetypes a little bit. See, the problem is if I go and I say, well, you know who I think is alpha? The Rock, right? If I said something like that, or something like, duh, obvious, right? There's going to be 100 guys in the chat that are going to go, well, The Rock's gay, right? You know, The Rock, he married a single mom. He's got, he adopted 3 kids, and they were sired by 4 different guys. So you didn't know what you're talking about. Using actors and actresses as real life examples is always a bad idea. I think that should be the second rule, or the second rule of the internet. Never use celebrities as your anecdotal or otherwise. Never use them as your examples, because somebody will say, well, I used to hang out with that guy back in high school, and he's not anything like you think he is, even though he's now 90 years old. Yeah, see, there it is. The Rock is a cuck. Oh, here, you get it. You win. The Rock is a cuck. Thanks for proving me right. Anyways, so let's see. The next thing I wanted to talk about is alpha and beta dynamics and masculinity, which is exactly what we're getting back to with respect to like what pretty much everything I've talked about with respect to alpha and beta finds its roots in conventional masculinity. So you have to accept, first off, that there is such a thing as conventional masculinity. Right. In this day and age, I put my notes up here. In this day and age, masculinity, there's been a war on masculinity for a very long time, and you will see various, actually, well-known minds on the internet will say, well, there's a war on men, and there's a war, and they'll pick up the flag for the MRAs, right? They'll pick up the flag and say, like Tucker. I remember when Tucker Carlson started talking about how there's a war on men, and suddenly he turned into a men's rights activist, or I think he might have had Christina Hoff Sommers on, and it was just whatever, the new hotness for him at that time. And I told Pat Campbell at the time, I said, you know what, this won't last. Because Pat was saying, I think Pat said something in effect like he knew him, or he knew like his people, and he was going to try to get me on, Tucker. And I'm like, well, that'd be great if you do, but do it quick, because and I was right. He didn't really stick to it all that long, or he'll come back to it when it's something that he thinks will get a rise out of people. And okay, but the fact remains is that masculinity and alpha and beta are intimately connected. So when we think of a guy who is a beta male guy, we think of a guy who's not as masculine, not as conventionally masculine. That's why I said that when we're talking about alpha, that, like, guys love to throw subjectivity about alpha, because it's usually what they think they represent, right? A real alpha wouldn't do this, or women will say the same thing. Like, whatever a woman is looking for in a long-term partner, she'll say a real alpha takes care of his kids. A real alpha has a good job. A real alpha goes to church on Sundays, and a real alpha loves his mother and puppy dogs. That's a real alpha to me. No, the real alpha to you is the guy who has a six-pack abs, has a V-taper, has a chiseled jawline, has a nice butt, has 22-inch guns, and looks like he could probably kill you, but he won't, because he loves you, and you're the only one who can tame Tarzan, right? That's pretty much really what an alpha, to a woman's hindbrain, that's what an alpha male is. To her to her front brain, to her what is it, our prefrontal cortex, yeah, sure, is the guy who makes most long-term sense. And so I think after a while, women start to define whatever that is their ideal according to what they're prioritizing. I've talked about this in the epiphany phase shows, and when I write about the epiphany phase, women will very fluidly rearrange their priorities as to what's alpha and what's beta, according to what it is that they need out of a guy at that particular time. So when a woman is, like, say, between the ages of, well, let's just say roundabout, she's 30 years old, her needs, or what she thinks of as an ideal mate, are probably not what she thought they were when she was 20 or 21 or 22. Because she needs something differently, and then she knows that, and that's really evidence of this sort of conversation that she has going on in her head. So masculinity to her, or idealized masculinity to her, it means something different. So guys get a lot of conflicting messages, and so here's why you're a beta. Here we go. Now we're an hour and 23 minutes into the show. Here's why you're a beta: because you've been trained to be for a very long time. Because if you were born and raised in a Western society, and yes, if you're in a Latin society, if you're if you're a black man, if you are, I don't care if you're in India or you're a Muslim or whatever, if you are in any way and part of a first world westernized society, in all likelihood, you have had, or you've been fed an idea by popular culture, by popular media, by a gynocentric social order, to be confused about your masculinity. Maybe you don't have a problem with it, but you're still being fed that message, and your kids are still being fed that message. A gynocentric social order has a vested interest in creating generation after generation of weak beta males. And I know, like, that sounds really like, oh man, that sounds good, man. Keep going, Rollo, keep going. Well, here's the thing: is I don't want to, yeah, Jay Cutler for sure. I don't want to feed you red meat. I want to give you, like, real education here. Okay. This isn't just like, oh yeah, let's all get together and commiserate. I want you to understand this shit. Okay. Since the sexual revolution, this is what's been going on. It's been a concentrated social engineering experiment to systematically remove conventional masculinity from men, to weaken Western society, and of course, and the counterbalance to that is what I call the fempowerment narrative, which is women can do anything. We're alpha females. I'll tell you what's funny. Remember when I talked about Adam ruins everything? And he was like, there's no such thing as an alpha male. There's no such thing as a beta male. It's been debunked by science. I guarantee you that if I talk to that guy or you talk to that guy, just sort of like unsolicited, and you said, hey, such and so is an alpha female, I will guarantee you that because that aligns with whatever his pet ideology is, he will agree with you. He will say, yeah, there's such a thing as an alpha female. Guarantee you that's what will happen, because that's easier to believe. He wants to believe that. Why? Because he's a product of a social order that has convinced him that masculinity is bad, that masculinity is either evil or it's confusing, or it's whatever you want to make it. It's no longer objective. Whether it's bad or it's confusing, it's no longer objective. It's subjective. It's what you make of it. Well, a real man does X, Y, and Z, and that's what you see happening right now. Is once guys get to a certain point in their lives, and they have to decide what does it mean to me to be a guy, to be a man. If they had a strong father figure that led them down the right path, or they're looking for, you want to know why Lost Boys are like the Lost Boys generation are looking for guys like me or Jordan Peterson or whoever else, or Elliot Hulse or Jocko Willink or whoever. Why are they looking for that father figure? Because they are the products of men, of fathers who were the products of other fathers, probably, because remember, I'm talking about 3 or 4 generations here, who have been systematically emasculated, or have been led to believe something about masculinity is not authentic, that it is an act. And you got to understand this, because you will not understand why you are a beta male today if you don't grasp this. So why is it that you are a beta male? Why is it that you think the things that you do? Why is it that you fight me tooth and nail when I broadcast the idea that there's such a thing as an alpha, or that this is what women are looking for? Why do they fight me on this? Why do they say, well, we're all people and we're all individuals? Why is there that resistance against what your grandfather, your well, maybe not your grandfather, your great-grandfather, your great-grandfather, and on back, since before the sexual revolution, they didn't have to be taught this shit. There was no Jordan Peterson in the Greatest Generation. There was no Jocko. Every guy was Jocko Willink in World War I. Okay, all these guys had to fucking sack up and go out and kick ass, and they didn't get up at 4:30 in the morning because they didn't have to go, oh, I got to work on it. No, they were already there. They were on the front lines. They were in the trenches already, because it's a generational shift, because they didn't have to think about this kind of stuff, because they didn't have to deal with the same kind of crap that your dad, and probably your grandfather had to deal with since 1965. So how did we get there? How do we get this generation of beta males who are confused about masculinity? Why is it that so many beta male men, it seems to me that there are far more beta men than there are alpha men. And even the alpha men, those beta men try to tear down. If you look at the thumbnail for today's show, that was from the cover of the Hollywood Report, something like that. It was like the rise of the beta males, and they were like celebrating, yay, I'm glad we can all cry now. We can all put our hands in each other's pockets, and we can all look like, sort of androgynous things. Remember, that's what feminism is really trying to promote, is androgyny. So when it tells women that you don't need no man, you need to be a strong, independent woman, you don't ever want to do anything for the pleasure of a man, what that's trying to teach women is that they can be independent of men, and that they are independent of anything outside themselves. That's a real easy sell for women, because women are innately solipsistic. So when you teach them that, and you say, well, you don't need it. You can have it all. You don't need any of that. You don't need a man to have a baby. You can marry a bridge. You can marry a chandelier. You can marry your dog. You can marry a fucking table. I don't care. It doesn't matter. Oh, I'm going to marry me because I'm going to invest in me. Right. That kind of stuff. They still want the wedding. Right. But there's this idea that feminism teaches women. I really need to do the blue pill for women at some point. Teaches women that they can be these independent, autonomous things, needing for nothing outside of themselves. What does that say to me? That says to me that person thinks that they are just this self-contained, autonomous thing. Well, they sell the same thing to guys too. It's harder to sell to guys, because guys need women. We need women to have sex. Because to solve our reproductive problem, we got to find a way to make that girl spread her legs. We got to figure something out. We've got to, and again, like I said, every guy has game and how effective it is, whatever. But at the end of the day, to disempower men, we have to take away the idea that masculinity is in any way legitimate. And that's what Disney has been doing for a century, practically, probably about a century right now. When did Disney start? Like 1920. So when you see this narrative, that is this fempowerment narrative, it is automatically a disempowerment narrative for guys, or it is a confusion narrative. You want to know why it only took, well, it took less than 5 years to sort of normalize and standardize the idea of transgenderism, and why it only took, in the space of about 4 or 5 years, the APA decided that masculinity, traditional, quote unquote, traditional masculinity, is a personality disorder or a psychological disorder, but they took transgenderism off of the disorder, like gender dysphoria, whatever, is off of the disorder list in the DSM, Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. Why? Why do we want to take all that? Why do we want to do that? Well, why do we want to make generation after generation of beta males? Well, of course, you're going to say, well, it's the communists or it's the socialists, or, and why? Okay, I'll even go that far. Why is democratic socialism? Why is it that we have women who are pushing for socialism in the U.S. Congress, or if there's any in the Senate? Maybe there is in the Senate. Why does that seem like suddenly a good idea? Back in the McCarthy era, well, that would have been heresy. Would never have heard something like that. We tried to root out communism in Hollywood, right? The blacklists in Hollywood. I mean, hell, we went to Vietnam because we thought communism was a bad thing. Or, I mean, again, I know Babe Tonk and all that stuff. I got it. Okay, I'm just saying that right now in 2020. Socialism is not a bad idea, or it's like, hey, maybe this is something we really want to try, right? It's not what it was before, because we have feminized generation after generation of guys to go, well, the girls seem to be into socialism, so yeah, sounds like a good idea, honey. You know, they're not going to push back against that because it took 3 generations to create a male that wouldn't push back. And so how do they do that? Well, how do you create beta males? Well, you confuse those beta males about what defines masculinity. And that's how you get those programs like what you're saying before here. And I've talked about masks of masculinity before. It's always a mask, right? If you are if you're a man and you act like a man, if you're a man and you act like an alpha male, if you act as if you're alpha, then that's an act. You're putting on an act. You're not being who you really are. If you were, and this is what they say, this is really the basis of the message, is if you were real, if you were authentic as a man, you would express your feelings. You would identify with the feminine. If you were a real man, if you weren't taught all this nonsense and you didn't feel like you had to act this way, in this inauthentic way, I feel so bad for boys today, because they're taught that they have to be chauvinists and misogynists, and they have to. I just feel so. I'm going to go start a class at Texas A&M about masculinity studies, because these guys, they got it rough, man. They're getting kicked in their ass by their coaches and their evil dads, and it's like this nonsense. I have an essay called "The Old Lie." The old lie is this: is that boys today, and boys in the last generation and the generation after that, all, like, for the last 3 or 4 generations, that they in some way are being enslaved by some, like, Coach Tarkanian, right? Some guy like, get up, little boy, smack, don't cry, what's wrong with you, smack, you shouldn't do that. You know, that's not what's happening, and it hasn't been happening for a long time. But it's an easy sell. It's an easy sell to this mentality that wants to delegitimize masculinity. In fact, we won't even allow masculinity in the language anymore. That's why you see all these pushes to remove MAN from the English language. I don't know how they're going to do that with, like, the Romance languages or like Latin, that are gendered languages. But in America, in the English language, they'll take firemen out and say, yo, you're a fire person now. Or you're not a mailman, you're a mail carrier. Oh, it's more inclusive, it's gender neutral. No, you're removing one thing from all of these things. What is that? 3 successive letters, MAN. That's what you find offensive. So that's part of that campaign. That's part of that social engineering program. And popular culture, media, popular psychology, the APA, Oprah, Dr. Phil, Phil Donahue, I don't know, whoever else, who's a popular talk show host right now. All that stuff, they're all in on it. They're all in on the let's emasculate men and let's get as many beta males as we possibly can, because they're useful. I mean, really, who builds a society? Why are beta males useful? Well, beta males are useful because they have to take that sexual angst of trying to solve their reproductive problem, and they rechannel that into creative pursuits, hopefully into creative pursuits. Some channel it to criminal pursuits, but no, but by and large, the reason why we have like the great cathedrals and the Taj Mahal and the great achievement, the seven wonders of the world, is primarily because of either slavery, or which again is alpha males enslaving people, or else it was guys who are saying, you know what, I can't get laid in any other way. I think I'm going to go be a blacksmith. Oh, I can't get laid in any other way. I've got to have some other value beyond to make up for the deficit of me not being a beta male or me not being an alpha male. So I've got to creative. I've got to learn things. I've got to adapt. And as a part of that adaptation, we build things, we do things, we solve problems. We put a bridge across the river so that women can go across there and not get their heinies wet. Oh, my hero! I don't have to do it anymore. Let's get married and have kids. That's the very stupid, simplified version of that whole thing. What do you want? Vinny says, in Latin languages, they inventing words under false premises. Yeah, they probably are. I don't know. Are they? Send me a link. I'd love to see it. Like, what are feminists doing with like Spanish? Like El Toro. No, La Tora. No, that's no. That's not Latin. Like there's actual shit. There's like gendered pronoun, or not gendered. What is it? What's the name of the word? Like la and el. Those are gendered, right? Anyways, I'm getting away from it's getting away from me. Okay, so here we go. So authenticity. So when we can convince generation after generation of men to say that kind of masculinity, or what those guys are doing, it's not even really masculine. Like, it's conventional masculinity. It's the way that guys are going to have a natural proclivity to act because they have testosterone in their bloodstream, because they were born male, because their brain architecture is male brain architecture, because the hormones, because the chemical makeup of what they are makes them male, because of what they are, they have natural proclivities. And as I was saying, those natural proclivities come out, they ooze out of your fingers. Your behaviors are what you've learned, yes, but also part of what you are, what you were born, what your hardware is, what your firmware is, and what your software is. So what a gynocentric social order tries to convince people of is that it's all software, that we can just reprogram everybody and it doesn't matter because all that alpha male stuff's been debunked by science. We can convince you that. Okay, so then what is it? Well, it's all social learning. It's all social constructionism. Horseshit. And it's increasingly more and more horseshit as we get further and further into technology. We have better studies. We have better understanding of male and female nature. But understand, so what happens when you start talking about that? You lose your job. When you say, hey, seems to me, I'm looking at all of this new research here, and guess what, guys? Men and women are different. You're fired. You're fired. That's how they silence you. That's how they keep you from talking about. What did you say? The three amigos? Something like amigos become amixas. Oh, wow. Jeez. So it's like the women with the X in it because we don't want MAN strung together. Got it. All right. So why is it that we need something like a documentary that says, the masks of masculinity? Why do we want to promote to our young kids, as young as 5 all the way up until they're like 18, 20, in their mid-20s, and even beyond that, to confuse them of what masculinity should mean to them? Why is it that, first of all, they don't have anybody to teach them, of course, because they're the product of at least 3 different generations of guys who were also confused about their masculinity and why they felt the way that they do, and what's in their own best interest, and what is their, like, I talk to guys here, maybe this is a good example of this. I like, particularly for book 4 right now. I have a section. Of course, I'm writing about religion, and one of the chapters, I should say, is about pornography. And why is it that 68, almost 70% of men, of Christian men, self-report that they are addicted or they have a problem with pornography? And they hate themselves and they're gender loathing. They hate I can't stand it. I can't stop it. I really want to, it's always there. It's on my phone. I can't stop playing with myself, right? Using pornography. Like why? And of course, the answer is that they feel that they should feel some way different from porn. I talked about that. I mean, if you missed out on the interview I did with Sterling Cooper on Thursday, that's actually a pretty well viewed show. I was very surprised. But so why is that? Well, because you're looking at your natural evolved biomechanics. So you're looking at your hardware and your firmware is conflicting with your software. So your software could be your religion. Like you shouldn't feel that way. You don't touch your pee-pee, Johnny. Don't do that because you'll go blind if you do that. And I'm not going to say, well, this is healthy and this is not. What I'm pointing out here is that your hardware and your mental firmware wants to get off. As a man, your male imperative is unlimited access to unlimited sexuality. That's why you're watching porn, because that's what it offers: unlimited access, unlimited sexuality. And your software says, no, this is wrong. We shouldn't be doing this. We're going to get addicted. Oh no, it says in the Bible I'm not supposed to do this, or my mom said I'm not supposed to do this. And so you've got this conflict between hardware and firmware versus what you're conflicting with. So keep that in mind, because what happens, that's an easy way to understand this, because like I said, your hardware and your firmware want unlimited access to unlimited sexuality. And here's an easy, quick way to get gratification of that. Okay. So that's one aspect. That's one, like, for men, our sex drive is part of conventional masculinity. How we affect that, the alphas affect it one way and betas affect it another way. That's one example of conventional masculinity, is men have a higher sex drive, a higher libido than women do. I don't care what anyone says. That is the truth. Okay. Women's sexuality is cyclic. Men's is always on. Women are looking for quality. Men are looking for quantity. It's not hard to understand. So that's one aspect. Now, what about the other aspects? Well, why do I feel like I want to do these things? Why do I feel like I have a natural proclivity? Why am I naturally aggressive? Why do I want to get in the gym? And why do I want to go and learn martial arts? Why do I want to beat the tar out of someone? Like my brother and I have one common interest, or we did when we were kids, was beating the shit out of each other. Why do you do? My dad was like, why are you guys fighting all the time? I don't understand what's going on. Because we're boys. That's what we do. And that's what's funny is I think is really kind of sad is during the Great Women's March of 2017, or yeah, I think it was 2017, 2016. I'm seeing these little kids who are like the sons of feminists, and they're holding these little placards around that says "Boys will be boys," and then the last "boys" is like crossed out and written in underneath it is "will be good humans." So boys will be good humans. So you're telling your son that he's not a good human, but don't worry, feminism and mommy will make you a good human, because we're going to socially program you to not be a boy. And I've written 2 essays. One was called "Good Humans," and there was another one called "Boys Will Be Boys." And in those, I try to explain this: is that there are natural things or natural proclivities that men and boys have. And so, and yeah, they're to some degree, they got to be curbed, right? You can't be stupid all the time. You can't jump off the freaking roof and think you're Superman and crack your skull. Okay, yeah, that's something. But you're wanting as a boy to go and do that. It's pretty alpha, first of all, and then second of all, it's like that's what kids do. I think on Twitter, there's like this series of videos called like "Why Women Live Longer Than Men," ha ha ha, right? Or particularly with COVID going on right now, I have seen nothing but articles about, well, women have better constitutions than men, or they have better immunities than men, and that's why men are dying. Well, that's okay. It affects women more than it does men. Thanks. Thanks, Karen. So when I die, it's all good because there's going to be a dude to, you're going to get your bull to root you out while I'm dead and cold in the ground. Right. Right. Thanks. Very humane of you. So, but why is that? Why do we have those natural proclivities? Why do we want to jump off the roof as a boy? Why do we want to? I talked about this the other day about like how you cannot excuse yourself from the game, or how you will always. What was it? I said he will always want to entertain women because that's part of men's firmware. When you see a little girl walking down the street and you go, "Ooh, she's cute," and you start riding wheelies down the street, hey, or you do whatever it is that you can do to get her attention. That's natural. You're supposed to do that. I mean, that in our ancestral past, you were supposed to do that. You display, she selects. The peacock shovels it does its little whole feathers and everything else. What was that? What was it? What is the one that where the one thing goes like this and it's got the feathers come up? It's not a peahen. It's something else. A pheasant. It's some kind of pheasant. And somebody was showing me that, and I go, yeah, there was a script. There was something like some Matrix, like at some point a script was, or a program was written to govern them. Yeah, that's what they do. That's what you do. You can control that. You don't have to do that. You don't have to sin. You don't have to do all this stuff. You don't have to do that. But you want to. That's your operative state. You're a guy. You want to do that. So what feminism does is it says all that stuff that you feel, that's just social programming. That was Coach Tarkanian, and that was the guy who beat you upside the head and called you names and made you cry and said it wasn't okay for you to cry. That's why you feel the way that you do. No. And they'll say, well, that's not legitimate. The way you feel as a man, the conventional things that are your natural proclivities, those are bad because those lead to war, and those lead to violence, and those lead to very bad things. And it's a shame because it's illegitimate, because that's not what you're really about. If you were really a real, honest to goodness, authentic man, or if you were it's not boys will be boys, you would be a good human if you would just, okay, well, what makes a good human? To be more like a woman, to be more like the female, to be more like to express your feelings, to put emotion before reason. That's another male, conventionally male proclivity that we cycle out, or we train out of boys and men. We teach them that the right way to think is the way that a girl or a woman would think. You only think that way because you were taught to be a male chauvinist, misogynist prick. That's why. Coach Tarkanian smacked you upside the head and he taught you that. You need to unlearn that. Okay, what do I need to do? How do I make girls like me? You got to act more like a girl. You got to identify. You got to get in touch with your feminine side. You got to get. You have to be more sensitive. You have to sensitive to my needs. You have to support me. You want to be a man. You want to be a real man. A real man supports his wife. A real man supports his kids. A real man supports. A real man provides. A real man is a provider. A real man shares his resources. A real man marries a single mom and takes care of her kids, because that's what a real man does. It's all of these needs and all of these things. So really, why do we have beta males? Why would you think that masculinity is inauthentic? And what most guys do, let me just finish this thought. What most guys do is two things. They either rebel against that and they say, fuck that, I'm going to do what I'm going to do. And most don't. But if you have an alpha male, sort of either a genetic disposition or an attitudinal disposition, you'll probably reject that. You're just like, you know what? I don't care if the world is against me. I'm going to be who I'm going to be. Mental point of origin. Or you'll go, okay, well, I'm a guy and men are natural problem solvers. So I got to figure things out. I got to figure out what it is a woman wants if I'm going to solve my reproductive problem. How can I serve you? Does that sound like provisioning? Does that sound like what we keep calling alpha bucks, beta bucks, right? So what does beta bucks entail? Can you be alpha bucks? Yeah, you can. Can you be beta fucks? Probably not. Maybe you can. Maybe if women want to use you for something, a transactional, yeah, that's beta fucks. Women have to do something for it, I suppose. But what I'm getting at here is, if we're going to have femme-powered women, we have to have disempowered men. In fact, women are now finally getting to a point where they're comfortable in saying that. As I was saying last podcast, or our last live stream, open hypergamy. Women are finally I wrote open hypergamy back in 2014. I was already noticing this. I said, you know what? Women don't care anymore. They don't care if you know what their mating strategy is. It used to behoove women to keep it secret, to say, you know what? Yeah, it really is alpha fucks and beta bugs, but no, don't tell anybody. In fact, women will get pissed off at other women. They call them gold diggers. And not because like all women aren't opportunistic. They are. It's just gold diggers happen to be upfront and open with it. And the reason why women hate other gold diggers is because they're giving away the game. It's like they're overt. They're open in the hypergamy. Like they say, well, you know, it doesn't matter. Here's the thing is at some point, like around 2014, 2015 is when I noticed this, is women decided, you know what? It doesn't matter if they know. Who cares? Because now I've got all of this benefit. I've got all these social benefits. I've got these financial benefits. Who cares if they know? I'll be happy to go and nail that guy and marry that guy. And I don't care if these guys know that. That's what open hypergamy is. It's not a verb, 33 Secrets guy. It is a state. And that's what that state was they finally became comfortable enough to openly embrace hypergamy. And guess what? I wrote another post called Open Cuckoldry, which also came true, which is where we're at right now. And guess where we're going from here? Poly. Poly's the next step. Now, you can say it's bad, it's good, whatever, but poly is a beta male, for the most part, is a beta male mating strategy. Because what's happened is since open hypergamy, beta males say, well, I guess I'm on the short end of the stick here. I guess there's nothing I can do about it. Well, either I can be dick in hand and jerk off, or I can play their game, because now open hypergamy is out in the open, and open cuckoldry then became out in the open. And so now they're like, well, I can be sexless, or I can accept her terms and I can marry her, and I can sort of live this semblance of a monogamous life while she goes and, you know, hunts for alphas on the weekend so she can bang them and have her needs met that I can't meet. That's why cuckold porn is such this is my opinion. That's why cuckold porn is such a big deal right now. And I asked Sterling Cooper about that on Thursday's show. I think that's why cuckold porn has seen such a rise in popularity, because we're on the, if not the cusp, but we're right in the middle of a generation where cuckoldry is something that it's not even taboo anymore. It's a turn on. Like I know I goof on Dr. Jeff Miller about this. Like he was saying, well, you know, we can do poly because we can eroticize our jealousy instinct. Well, what happens then? Well, you get enough guys to eroticize their jealousy instinct, that's going to spawn a whole new niche of porn, which happens to be cuckoldry porn, which is very popular amongst beta males, because they see that and they get off on the idea that they are inferior, that they are like, they can't satisfy their wives and they have to sit there and watch. And that triggers, like, they've eroticized that jealousy. They've eroticized the need for knowing and ascertaining paternity, which is a natural evolved proclivity in men. Imagine that. Here we come back full circle. So now you have this natural proclivity that's been bastardized, or has been perverted, has been distorted into something that you get off on, rather than something that you have a feeling of revulsion for. So if there is a definition of social engineering, that's it. So anyways, there's that. So why is this? Why are you, and what's happened at this point? I'm probably going to go a little bit over today, guys. Sorry. So, because I have to get to this last one here. So I think, well, I'm looking at my list here. There's one last part on here that I got to work up to, but I want to make sure I got everything before I go. Okay. So I talked about intrasexual combat already. Let's see. What do you want, Ibo? Sorry. Grandpa was separated from his first family during World War II, then was a POW in Russia. After that, had a second family, still took care of both families. I hate feminism for disrespecting their own male ancestors, and men today letting this slide. Okay. Wow, no Giuseppe today. I'm almost disappointed. Sterling, thank you. He says, do you have any advice on killing the shame of being accused of only giving in order to receive? Oh, giving in order to receive. Okay, you're not a real nice guy. It's my biggest beta tendency. Struggle since studying red pill. I'll take my answer off the air. Okay, so here's the deal. No, I'll answer that. That's fine. That's cool. I feel for you because this is a very common beta male kind of malady, I guess. Guys who have who have been either trained or have sort of this natural way of being more of a beta male guy, um, they tend to be nice guys. Obviously, that and being a nice guy seems like logic to the beta male mindset. I'll just be nice. I'll identify with the feminine. In fact, that is the primary element of beta game, which is identify with her. They take this literally. Get in touch with your feminine side. They take that literally. And so how do they do that? Well, I want to do things. Not, I have the, I feel, and what kills me is like, again, I'm not the enemy of beta males. Okay. I'm not the enemy of AFCs, but what happens is these guys really invest themselves in being nice, and they think that they're going to hit pay dirt sooner or later. And if a girl doesn't think that they're nice, or if a girl has a problem with that, then she's not a quality girl. It's circular logic. It's so easy to say, well, here I am, I'm doing all these nice things. Oh, she turned into a bitch. She was not a quality girl. No, she's a quality girl. She's just reacting to, well, she's not quality, but the woman is reacting to you because she thinks that you are not genuine. You are not authentic. And that's what kills me about this, is because most beta male guys who are stereotypical nice guys, they really are invested. They really want to be nice. They really, man, I would love if nice guys got laid. I would love it if niceness and virtue and all of these great moral virtues, and I really wish that amounted amounted to an ounce of pussy, and it doesn't. It never will, because that's not how we evolved. Sorry, that's the ugly evolved side of all of this, and it's something you got to accept. But like, I feel you, man, because I know I would love for like here my now like I would love to be nice. I would. I want to be the nice guy, but I can't. I can't do that because I've used the nice guy card. It doesn't buy shit. Okay. So, and it doesn't mean you have to be an asshole. It just means you have to harness the energy of the asshole. It doesn't mean you have to be like the overbearing, domineering, dark triad prick. It means you have to take that energy and you have to understand. You have to to defeat the prick. We must understand the prick. To get laid and solve our reproductive problems, we must understand the prick. Okay, so here's how the prick thinks. Right, he thinks about himself. He makes himself his mental point of origin. I always add, what is it? Sorry, I'm drawing a blank here. um, what is it? Enlightened self-interest. Shit, why am I not thinking right? Enlightened self-interest, which is that is not a Biden move. That is not a Biden moment. I swear to God. Enlightened self-interest, which is I can't help anyone until I can help myself first. That's harnessing that prick energy and using it for yourself and hopefully the people who are worth your investment. But you guys get hammered flat by girls because you are really nice. And what's the first thing out of their mouths? Hey, you're just doing this because you want to get in my pants. No, I'm actually trying to be nice. I thought that's what you guys wanted. Well, you're doing it because you want to fuck me. There's no sex gonna happen here, mister. Well, okay, I guess I'll be a dick. Okay. and that's that, right? And so you make that connection. I think a lot of guys, and maybe not so much now because we have the internet, we have the red pill, we have all this stuff, but classically, the classic nice guy, he's not a wolf in sheep's clothing. He actually wants to. He actually believes in being nice, but women will never believe that because, and particularly now, because it doesn't seem authentic. It doesn't seem genuine to them. They're on the. I mean, remember, a woman's hypergamous filter, her feminine intuition, is a very highly tuned thing, or usually should be a very highly tuned. We don't think it is. I think when we see a girl who goes back constantly to the guy who's the type of guy that a woman goes back to is the guy who we would never want a woman to be. We wouldn't want our daughters to go back with that guy, but that's the guy that she keeps going back. And we think, oh, there must be something wrong with her. She must be damaged. There must be something wrong with her hypergamous filter because she's making bad decisions by keep constantly going back. And even women will say, I don't know why. I just love this guy. He's an asshole. He's a criminal. He killed 5 people. He's got the teardrop on his eye. I don't know. I just keep going and fucking him. And I don't know why. It's wrong. There's something wrong with me. No, there's something wrong with my hypergamous filter. No, No, it's working. That's the thing. You're filtering out the nice guys and filtering out all the guys you don't want to bang. And you're going with the guy that you do want to bang. You do want to bang. Doesn't make any rational sense, but what does, right? What does with women? Because women are instinct, emotion, and reason. That's why. So there you go. Thank you for your $22. I hope that was a good $22 answer. And there's one, I'm going to go back through I swear to God, I'm going to go back through all of these because we're now at the 2-hour mark, but I did want to get to a few things here first. So my last point is this. So what is a beta in waiting? Now, what happens? How do you create a beta? Well, you have to start early. And I've said this about 1 billion times with Pat Campbell on his show, on this show, on Rule Zero, on lots of other things. It's like when we have to get to boys earlier and earlier these days. That's why you're seeing this push to pretend that a little child as young as 3 has been on planet Earth for 3 years can decide whether or not it wants to be a boy or a girl for the rest of its life. Why is that such a big deal? Where did that come from? Oh, well, it only happened about 4 years ago. In 4 years, we've standardized, we've normalized the idea that a little child has the capacity for abstract thinking well enough that it can make those decisions for itself. I was born the wrong sex, mommy. Change me. Well, who told you that? Disney. Moana. Frozen. They taught me that I'm the wrong person. I don't want to have these parts. Why do we teach them that? Why is that? Do you want to know about social conditioning? It's social engineering, social construction, constructionism. That's it. That's not naturalism. That's not, I think people get turned off to what I talk about because they think that it's more deterministic, and in a way it kind of is, but I'm not saying you can't overcome your hardware and your firmware. Clearly you can overcome those things. If you can go on a hunger strike and die, you can overcome your hardware and your firmware. People do it all the time. Or people just die from starvation. Or people kill themselves with bulimia. You can override your physical and your firmware. It's not hard to do that. So keep that in mind. The other thing I was going to say is that when you get to the point, like how come you're a 30-year-old guy and you just became red pilled and you're still beta, you still know that you're beta, you don't know how you came to believing the things that you believed in? Well, the reason for that is because you've been taught to be a beta in waiting. And what I mean by that is one of the points, one of the purposes, and here's the kicker, here's the end of the show kicker. One of the purposes of this social engineering movement, first of all, it's to disempower men, of course. But what do we do with those guys when we've created all these betas? How can we use them? There's a utility to beta men. We got to keep them in the program. We got to keep them being, producing things and producing money and resources. How do we keep them in the game? We promise them that what they're doing will eventually solve their reproductive problem. So Disney, the village, your mom, psychologists, education system will teach you to serve women. As a beta male, it will teach you that you should always pedestalize women. You should pedestalize womankind. You should not make yourself your own mental point of origin. You should make women your mental point of origin. And most of those guys get hammered flat throughout life until one magic moment in their life. Guess when that is? Right around 30. Right around your ascent to your sexual market value peak years, or what potentially should be your sexual market value peak years. Right around 30. That's when the beta in waiting was taught as a young child, as a teenager, as a young adult in 18, maybe even in the military, certainly through college. Hopefully you have made a lot of yourself. You're still following the old social contract to make you what you think society wants of a guy. Like that's what a real man does, right? A real man marries why is that a thing? This is a good example. Why is it a thing now to say a real man is not the stepdad? He's the man who stepped up, right? Why is that a thing? Why is it a thing for guys to be encouraged to be socially rewarded for their own self-cuckoldry, which is what it amounts to? For being a single, or for marrying a single mother? like adopting her 3 kids. Well, she needs help. That was the right thing. Churches love this shit now because churches have been feminized, like a mainstream religion has been feminized. And well, we got this congregation full of single mothers. We got to get them married. They need some help. We got all these single guys. They don't want to get married because they're not, now that they're 30, they're still trying to figure things out because we think that men are dumb. We've engineered generations to believe that men are ridiculous buffoons or they're evil. They're evil abusers or they're ridiculous buffoons. Well, the ones we got in church are ridiculous buffoons. So let's set these guys up. Well, what are you doing? What you're doing is you're completing women's mating strategy. Alpha fucks, beta bucks. So when you got a single mother who bred with guys that she chose to have sex with and chose to have those, and nobody forced her to have those pregnancies. She had to have those pregnancies. She either wanted to or she thought she could tame the guy. She thought, for whatever reason, she had those kids. And she also has the option to have safe legal abortions whenever she wants to. Most Western societies have that. She didn't kill the kids. She had the kids. Now she has no support. She does not have a male to offer parental investment. But now the beta and waiting comes in. And she's very nice. And the church says, this is what you should do. This is what you should be a single, or you should be a stepdad and the dad who stepped up. You should not care about your own paternity. You should complete this girl's or this woman's mating strategy and live happily ever after. And people will pat you on the back and say, oh, he was a great guy. You're still a chump. You're still a beta. You're still a blue pill guy. But you think that your chip has come in. You think because she's into you. I'm not saying this is the only reason for betas and waiting, but I'm just saying this is a big deal, is that you need to be there at 30 and dumb and ignorant of the game. And that is why you are taught from a very beginning, from the time you're 5 years old to the time you get to be about 30 years old, that you should be a certain way. That's 25-year span. In 25 years, you're taught that you should be a certain way. You should, the way you're going to solve your reproductive problem is to wait for the right one. Maybe you have some sex along the way, who knows? But if you have any sex before you get to 30, then that's meaningless sex. If you have any delusions of being conventionally masculine, well, those aren't genuine, because if you were genuine and you were authentic, you'd act more like a female. So you finally get to 30 and women are suddenly beating down your door because they realize at that time, if you look at my very now infamous graph of sexual market value, like the two, like the pink bell curve and the blue bell curve, right at the point of intersection where women are in their epiphany phase, they're at 30 and you're at 30. Women want guys to be dumb. They want you to not get it. That's why they hate red pill. That's why the whole world hates a society based on feminine supremacy, a society, a gynocentric society hates red pill because we educate guys. We teach the slaves to read. We teach them to read. We teach them to see the signs. We're the biggest threat to. That's why they hate MGTOW. They hate red pill. They hate black pill. They hate all this stuff. That's why they will vilify you. That's why they won't believe that you're nice. Because if you figure it out, if enough guys figure it out before they get to 30, then you're going to see more and more single moms. And that's exactly what you're seeing right now. That's why 43% of children in the United States are born out of wedlock right now. I just saw Washington Post just put up stats for 2019. Marriage rates have plummeted 6%. Since the time that they started tracking all of this, it plummeted 6%. Right now, the average age of first marriage for women is 28 and it's 29 for men. Do you think that's a coincidence? No, it's because a generation of guys are starting to wake up. And I know that MGTOW are going to want to fly their flag. Go right ahead. Okay. This is not because of you. It's just because even if you cease to exist and I cease to exist and all this cease to exist, we have the internet. We have this new order way of understanding intersexual dynamics, and guys are figuring it out. It's not me. It's not you. It's just everybody. It's too obvious. It's unignorable now. And so that's why you're seeing these kinds of stats. And so everybody goes, well, MGTOW want to say, it's us, we win. And then you got the tradcons are going, oh, it's terrible. The guys just won't man up. No, it's because there is no authority for men in marriage, and there is 100% responsibility for men in marriage. That's why. But they don't want to, nobody wants to address that. And so guess what? In 2021, we're going to look at the stats for 2020, and they're going to be dropping down that much more because nobody wants to come together. Nobody wants to create families. Nobody wants to, guess what? The guys who are supposed to be dumb, according to the old paradigm, to the fempowerment paradigm, they're not dumb anymore. And even if I wasn't saying it, they wouldn't be dumb. They'd still be figuring this stuff out. And that's why betas in waiting are a thing. You've been taught your entire life to be a beta, to be serviceable, to be the guy who's right, Johnny on the spot, right? Oh, guess what? Oh, you need some help, lady? My lady, I'm right there. That guy is not going to be there anymore. And that's why you see all these. That's why I was doing this research, and I'm done now, but I was doing some research for the book, and there is a huge grift, let's just say. It's almost like the power of positivity, success porn grift. It's the exact same multi-level marketing niche kind of stuff, but it's for female ministries, for female Christian, evangelical Christian ministries. So you get Beth Moore, or you get like these other, Sheila Gregoire, or you get, you guys probably have no idea who I'm talking about, but like, think about all the things like guys like you get sold these, how to get rich online, or develop your email list, or all of these things. Think about that in an evangelical Christian context with just women in it. And so I was looking at the stats for that. And in that sort of women's ministry grift, online, success porn grift, there is a ministry for single moms. Why? Well, because there's so many single mothers in evangelical Christianity right now that even in those churches that are trying to prioritize these beta male men who no longer are a part of those churches anymore, don't want to have anything to do with church, quite honestly, are not there to marry them anymore. And so now we had to find something else. Because, single moms, well, single moms are already on an unstable, insecure footing already as it is, because they made some bad decisions for themselves, or maybe bad circumstances happen, who knows. But regardless, they are where they're at due to bad hypergamous choices, let's just say. Okay. Unless those kids are a product of rape, they made the decision to have those children. And so therefore, we've got, because the demand for men to marry single mothers is so high right now that it can't possibly be met in churches or in religious or in conservative perspectives. It has to be met outside of that. And it's gotten so bad that it's become a grift. So now it's like, oh, guess what, ladies? I'm going to sell you my product, and it's going to be about how you can be a Christian single woman and a single mother, and how you can land a man. Why? Because nobody's in the church, because the guys don't want to have anything to do with it anymore. They're waking up. They understand this. They understand now, or that maybe they read the Rational Male. Maybe they just simply saw enough guys get raked over the coals to say, I don't have anything to do with that. I want to have my own kids. Thank you. I don't want to raise someone else's kids. I know that makes me sound like a prick, but guess what? That's my evolved imperative. As a man, I need to know, my hardware and my firmware says the most important fucking thing in this world is to know that the kid is mine. And guess what? Those kids ain't mine. Now, I can be a really great guy, and my software or my religious beliefs or my ideology or whatever it is that I've been trained from a childhood to believe, my blue pill conditioning, I can override that and go, oh, good, I really want to feel good, so I'm going to adopt your kids. And guess what? She completes her sexual strategy and you don't. Or maybe you do, but not as well as you could have had you not gotten involved with a single mother. It's not just about single mothers, okay? So I'm using that as an example because it's the easiest thing to understand. It's the easiest illustration to make. So when you get to 30, she gets to 30, you need to be there and dumb and serviceable. That's why you are beta in waiting. So the guys are like, gosh, I hope when I get to be 30 that she'll finally see the light. She'll finally give up on those bad boys. She'll finally be at the end of her journey of self-discovery. And I'll be there waiting like Forrest Gump for his girlfriend who basically banged and got AIDS and had a baby out of wedlock. But that's okay because Forrest is a great guy. That was a nightmare. Remember I told you to go back and look at some of those movies from the 80s and the 90s with a red pill lens or listen to those music? That's what I'm talking about. Like Miss Doubtfire. Whoa, watch that with a red pill lens. Watch Mrs. Doubtfire. That's your homework. Okay. Class, this is your homework. I want you to go and rent Mrs. Doubtfire with Robin Williams, who actually killed himself because of red pill reasons. Go and watch that with a red pill lens. Tell me what you think. Go and watch, let's see, Forrest Gump. Tell me what you think with a red pill lens. Listen to some sappy 80s power ballads. Come back. Tell me what you think. That's your homework. There's your homework, class. That's what I need you to do for me this week. Okay, I'm going to move on. That's why you're a beta in waiting. You've been trained your entire life. The Village, Disney, psychology, education, popular television, popular culture, anything that the feminine imperative could assimilate and take control, and that had an influence on creating the man you are today, the beta in waiting that you are today. This is where you start. If this is you, I hate to give an altar call at the end of this, but if this is you, you can change. That's the good news. Okay. And a lot of guys are, as a matter of fact. That's why you see those stats, right? Guys are waking up. Okay. Women will hate you and they will hate me. If they hate you, they hated me first. No, if they hate you, it's because you're aware. It's like I got one that can see. So, but the next step is this: you need to kill the beta. You need to kill the beta, the inner beta off, and that's hard to do because probably for the and like this gets back to that final question that I got. It's like, how do I do that? It's just, is it something that I have to do for the rest of my life? No, probably not. Unless you're like 60 years old and you're awakened while married, or suddenly you're red pill at 70. You might have I don't know how much time you have left, but you can do yourself a favor by changing your mind about yourself. By saying, by recognizing, by cognitively recognizing that you are the product of this influence of the blue pill. That's the easiest way to illustrate it. I mean, I hate to just, I'm really getting tired of using matrix, allegory or, metaphors, whatever, but they work. I'm sorry. That's just what it is. The blue pill has taught you to be what you are today. Okay. Now, the last thing I'm going to tell you is this: is if you remember, and I just watched it recently, if you watch The Matrix, there's a part in there where Neo goes back and they get in that badass Lincoln Continental too, the one with the suicide doors. They get into that car and they're going to see the Oracle for the first time. They're driving down the street and Neo looks out the door and he goes, "Oh man, I used to eat there. They have really good noodles." And then he stops for a second and then he looks at Trinity. He says, "I have all these memories of my prior life and none of them were real." And Trinity looks at him like, "Yeah." He says, "What does that mean?" And then Trinity says this. He says, "It means that the Matrix can't tell you who you are anymore." And I didn't get the significance of that until I watched it just recently. I didn't. That was like I always say, why do my eyes hurt? That's a profound one, I think, too. But the Matrix can't tell you who you are anymore. You get to do that now. And that's really when it comes to unplugging, when it comes to realizing where you fit in intersexual dynamics, when it fits, like what's the game that has been run on you up until like you're beta and waiting until you get to be 30 years old. Now that's a tough pill to swallow, man. That is a tough, because most guys are unprepared. They're not creative enough to rebuild themselves. They're not creative enough to change their minds about themselves. But guess what? You can't go back. If you're watching this, if you read my book, if you're into any red pill literature, I don't care if it's MGTOW, black pill, whatever, you can't go back now. You can't unsee this. So what do you do? What does that mean, Rollo? That means that the feminine imperative, that means that gynosexual social order, that means that all the influences that led up to you being who you are right now can't tell you to be what they want you to be anymore. You get to decide. And I know that's scary as shit. Okay. I get it. But you're the one that has to do that. I can't do that for you. People say, "Oh, give me a prescription. Give me 12 rules for life." No, man, it's you. You get to do, you be the artist. You finally figured it out. Somebody's giving you a paint set. They were painting all, "I'm going to do whatever I want to with this guy's canvas. He's going to be an idiot at 30. No, now you've got a paintbrush. Now you can make your life whatever the hell you want it to be. God forbid I tell you what to do. Fuck me. Do it yourself, man. Go, and you're a better architect of your own life than I'd ever be. Goddamn cord. Okay, guys, let me I think I got to everything I wanted to today. I'm sorry. I promised myself I wouldn't go over 2 hours, but this is just another one of those deep ones. What'd you say? Me, Myself, and Irene is a good film about how a guy went from blue pill to red pill. Oh, you know what? Here's another movie suggestion. Go watch Blue Valentine. That will fuck you up as a red pill guy. That will fuck you up. Watch Blue Valentine. You might need a little alcohol with that one. Just saying. All right. I know I got blown off on some of these here. So Vinny said, based on your last article, why is vetting for genuine desire a beta trait? It's not a beta trait. That's just it. I think you misread that, Vinny. Vetting for desire is your alpha side or your alpha. When what Vinny's talking about here is I analyze the situation between Steve Jobs and Joan Baez, and the whole thing centered on this red dress. And that's why I said this is a mystery of the red dress. Steve Jobs had told Joan Baez that there's this really great red dress. It's down at the Ralph Lauren. Go check it out. Blah, blah, blah. And so they both go down there, and they ended up having a romantic relationship after, but this is in the beginning of it. And he said, there's a really great red dress at the Ralph Lauren and wherever they were. And he said, it would look really good on you. Or it would look perfect on you. That's what he said. It would look perfect on you. That's not beta. He just said it would look perfect on you. Now, it seems beta, but remember, people say, oh, he's crazy. No, well, Steve Jobs is crazy like a fox. So he goes down there. They go down there. He points it out to her. He buys like a couple shirts and stuff. And he says, you should buy it. And I guess for whatever reason, like Joan in the interview, she said that it was too expensive and she couldn't get it. And I'm calling bullshit on that. I think she just, because from what she said, she wanted him to buy it, or she expected him to buy it. Now, our MGTOW 21st century brain says, oh, well, good. He didn't do it. Great. Good for him. No, that wasn't the operative in this. What happened here is he wanted her to buy it for herself to wear for him. At least that's what I'm figuring. Now I might say, well, you're convoluting things, Rollo. No, here's why I think that. Because he brought her down there, said that would look perfect on you. If he had bought that for her, that first of all, that cements in a pre-established transactional relationship. And most rich guys, this is a stereotype. This is a cliche. If you ever seen Eddie Murphy's Coming to America, where he comes in, I don't want a rich girl, a girl who wants me for my money. I want her for my mind, or she loves me because of me, right? I know it's a comedy, like Coming to America, 80s comedy with Arsenio Hall and Eddie Murphy. I know it's a comedy, but think about the deeper meaning of this. Here's a guy who is exorbitant, crazy. He's a king. He's a prince. He's got money coming out of his ears. He can do whatever he wants to. And this is a classic story for rich men who have the world. I have the world, but I don't want a woman who just loves me because of my money. I want her to love me because of me. So when I say that men are idealists, that's what I'm talking about. That's another male fantasy, a beta male fantasy too. But it's a fantasy because it's like, well, it presumes that man's idealistic ideal of his concept of love is something that woman will share. So he has to test for it. And that's what Steve Jobs is doing, is has to test for it. Because if he buys it for her, then it's just him saying, oh, wear this for me, right? Whereas if she buys it for him, or she buys it for herself and then wears it for him, that's genuine desire. Because she's doing something expressly to please him. She's making a sacrifice. She's got to come up with the money to go and put this red dress on. And if she were smart, if she were the kind of girl that Steve Jobs probably would have wanted to marry and stick around, like they split up because she didn't want kids and he did. He was testing for genuine desire. That is alpha. Because he's and maybe he didn't do this cognitively. Maybe this is a subconscious thing, because people say, well, he's weird, or he's got a reality, he's a sociopath, or there's something wrong. And maybe they're right to an extent. But this is a guy's subconscious saying, I want to, it's a test. I want to see, I have the world. I can do whatever the hell I want. If you don't bang me or you don't show me real desire, there's 100 girls I can get laid. Dan Blitzarian can get laid. Okay, if he wants to, but he can't find true love. He can't find meaningful sex, right? And that's what he's throwing. Dan's been throwing out a lot lately. So what Steve Jobs does is he says that would look perfect on you, and leaves it at that. And she's like, "Oh, I can't afford it, whatever." She could have easily, come on, they had a mutual friend, Ralph Lauren, who owned the store. She could have easily said, "Hey, can I get that dress? How do I get that dress?" She's Joan Baez. I'm sure she could afford the dress, but let's just say, for sake of argument, she couldn't. It's not like she couldn't have gone, "Hey, Ralph, can I get this dress? I think it would look really perfect on me, and I know that Jobs wants it," or whatever. He probably would have been happy to have Joan Baez wearing a dress from his store. This was 1982, so I don't know who, maybe not. But anyways, she could have done it. That's sacrifice. That's showing some sort of effort to please Steve Jobs. Now, was it as elaborate as that? I don't know, but my theory is that it was his subconscious testing her, vetting her for that thing. So is that alpha? Is that beta? No, I think it's probably pretty alpha, because he's looking for genuine desire. There you go. What else do I have here? You guys throw shit at me at the very end. There it is. Men love idealistically, women love opportunistically. Yes, in fact, I've done a show on that already. But really, most men love beta, love idealistically, but alpha men love opportunistically. Women love most men opportunistically, but love alpha men idealistically. Agree. Yeah, I see where you're going with that. I don't like. Here's the thing: is the reason you have to understand why I say idealism and opportunism are kind of unique to the female and the male perspective. Okay, for men, for men, you have to go back to what are women's mating imperatives. Okay, and what are men's, right? For men, it's unlimited access to unlimited sexuality, right? They can get. It would be great if guys could just. It was like a porn movie every night, right? Here's some new girls that just decided to drop by, and we're gonna get into it, right? But most guys can't do that. I've said this before. There's a concept called strategic pluralism theory, and what that states is that men who are lower SMV, lower sexual market value, have to, by necessity, put all their eggs in one basket, because they can't realize, they can't make actionable unlimited access to unlimited sexuality in real life. Okay, they could do it like virtually now, but thanks to porn. But they can't usually do that. So that means that their mating strategy has to alter. Most men are beta. That's why I say idealistic. So in a sense, I guess I would sort of agree with you, but like alpha men are also taught to be monogamous. They're also taught socially enforced monogamy. And socially enforced monogamy is based on men's idealistic concept of love. That's why you believe in the soulmate myth. That's why you're a nice guy. That's why you think you can solve it. That's why Captain Save-A-Ho exists, right? Because he thinks that love should exist for love's sake. Women, on the other hand, what's their sexual imperative? Hypergamy, right? They're looking for quality. They're looking for the best of, hopefully, both worlds, but they're looking for the best of two worlds, alpha fucks and beta bucks. So the guy who's the top of the heap, alpha fucks wise, she wants to get with that guy. And the guy who is the best provider, well, I need a man with benefits. Usually those guys don't come at the same time now, because women want to optimize their hypergamy during their party years, during their peak fertility years, when they're at the height of their physical appeal, their height of their physical availability, sexual availability. That's what, and it makes sense, right? Well, I'm 22. That's why women love YOLO. You only live once. That's why they love Instagram. That's why they love social media. Well, it's a communication thing too, but it maximizes their potential to get with the guy who is the best example, the apex example of alpha fucks, when they are at the best example, the apex example of when they're in their peak sexual market value years. So that's why they do that. But that guy, apex alpha and apex beta, don't get anywhere near that cooter unless he checks off a lot of boxes. So that's why I say it's based on opportunism. So when women will not allow themselves to invest themselves emotionally in a guy that doesn't check off at least the top 2 or 3 boxes, maybe 4 boxes of her hypergamous priorities. That's why I say they shift. Like when a woman gets into her epiphany phase, those priorities shift. So that's why I say women are more opportunistic when it comes to their concepts of love. Are they idealistic about that guy? Only when they want to tame that guy. And here's the kicker. Women only become idealistic about love when they know that that's what that guy is about. And the benefits outweigh coming over to his concept of love. It's very much like when like I've said this before, men and women have different communication styles, right? Men are overt, women are covert. When a woman wants that guy to understand her in no uncertain terms, she will say, "Get away from me, you creep," or cry or scream at him. She's entering into his overt communication style so she can get with him. Guys make the mistake of thinking that they can be women, right? That they can communicate as women. Oh, well, like most beta males will try to communicate as women. They'll be like, "Oh, yeah, I'll be your friend. Sure, I'll come over there. We can go paint nails. That's fine. We can do all the fun things that your girlfriend does because I identify with girls." Well, what happens is that communication, that identification says to a woman's hindbrain, and you're dealing with a girl, not a guy you'd want to fuck. Certainly not a guy you want to reproduce with. You're dealing with a girl. He talks like a girl. He looks like a girl. He acts like a girl. He is a girl. If it talks like a duck and walks like a duck, it's a duck. If it talks like a girl, it's a girl. That's at least to her hindbrain, to her most basic form of awareness and consciousness. So when you go, "Yeah, sure, I'll talk to you for hours on the phone. Yeah, sure," and you think you're communicating with her, and because you're identifying and you're trying to emote and express yourself like a woman, what does that say to the woman's subconscious? I'm dealing with a woman. That's why guys and women, men and women, can never be like real friends, because what happens is we have our same sex understanding of like our same sex friendships. So when a woman when guys are friends, they relate to each other as men. They don't say, "Oh, I'm going to be more like a girl in this." Okay, cool. I'll be the guy. They don't do that. But when you get a man and a woman, that dynamic always, especially if the guy's already attracted and he's trying to get in there. And like people say, "Well, if you're not attracted to her, you can totally be friends." Yeah, but you're a guy. You're not going to, you have better things to do. I'm sure you have a great friendship, but you have other priorities. And if that's a dead end, why am I going to go there? And then sooner or later you get with a girl and your friendship dies with this other girl, or the girl that you're with gets jealous. It's silly. I'm not saying you can't be friends or acquaintances, or you got to be a dick to girls you don't, that are just like your friends. You don't have to do that. Of course not. But you're not going to have the same quality of friendship as, I got to really do one on friendship, don't I? You're not going to have the same quality of friendship with a woman as you would with a guy, because there's a different dynamic between two guys, and lots of good guys and women. But when you as a beta male go, "Oh, sure, I'll be your friend. I'll do," what are we going to do? Hang out? What are we going to do when we hang out? Paint nails, talk about cute guys, talk about, we're going to we're going to have a pillow fight. I don't know, whatever the fuck you do, right? You do that, she is interpreting you as a female. That's as simple as that. That's why you should always communicate as a male. Wham, bam. That's it. Me, myself, and I, and Irene. Okay, I talked about that. Vinny, I got to you. John Garcia said, "When I was younger, my mindset was to satisfy the women." Yes, of course, because you were beta and waiting. You were trained. Mr. C, $5 says, "Have you a valediction, boyo? I learn more from you each podcast." No, but you know what I would love to do? We're getting close to graduation. And at every graduation, I kind of regret that I'm not able to give the commencement speech. So I really want to do that sometime. I really want to give a commencement speech, because I don't give prescriptions, but I could probably give a pretty damn good graduation commencement speech. So maybe I'll do that soon. Like a red pill commencement speech for the graduating class. Thank you. You are the graduating class of 2020 at Rational Male. There you go. At Rational Male University. That's what I should call this. Let's see. I think I covered everything. Did I? Yes. Holy crap. I got to all of them. All right. If I didn't, by some crazy mischance, go ahead and hit me up an email and I'll be glad to answer any brief thing I can. Also, if you haven't subscribed to this channel, please do. Do what you should. Don't be a bully. Do what you should. I hope you guys got something out of this. I try to make these as educational as possible. Like I said, I'm the professor. I'm not Tom Likas, but I'm the professor. I don't give you red meat. I give you an education. So I hope you learned something from this. I hope you guys. Does anybody take notes when I'm talking? I know you can always go back. Very few people watch the entire stream. Most people check out after 30 minutes, which is why I'm going to be starting to do some more quick hit ones. Like about, and for me, like, yeah, quick hit. A quick hit for Rollo is about 25 minutes. Now, so yeah, I'm going to be doing some. I got the dusted off the video. What is it? My GoPro. So I'll be doing. I got the whole vlogging kit for it now. So. I will be back on Rule Zero on Saturday. I don't have any special interviews this week, so sorry. Rule Zero, I think it is Rich Cooper's turn to host. So look for Rule Zero on Rich Cooper's channel, unless he's unavailable, and then it'll probably be on like Ryan's channel, or maybe Troy. Maybe Troy's up next. I don't know. Anyways, watch all the right channels, and you'll figure it out. With that said, still working on book 4. I'm trying my goal, like, you know what Zig Ziglar said. So the difference between a goal and a dream is a deadline. So I'm giving myself a deadline for the book. I need to have it. Well, I certainly want to have it done by the end of May. I'm going to shoot for the second weekend of May if I can do it. I've got to put my nose to the grindstone and really get some stuff done. I held off on doing the forward and the afterword because of the COVID-19 thing, and I want to make it. Well, actually, the book is already relevant, but I want to make those sections very relevant to a post-virus world. So that's what I'm doing. It will be available in paperback as usual, and it will also be available as an ebook. Eventually, it will be available as an audiobook once Sambata is done with it, and I send him the approved copy to read. So there you have it. I'm glad you guys spent all of this great time with me, and I will see you at 11:30 a.m. Eastern. Like I said, I believe it's Rich Cooper. It could be Troy, one of those. But anyways, I'll see you on Rule Zero on Saturday, and then again on Sunday at our regular time. So thanks, guys. Bye.